Good evening. The chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes from November 10th, 2021 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Corrections to the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. The first item on the agenda tonight is 355 Broadway Avenue West, the American Legion sign variance. Nathan, are you?
That's me, thank you. Staff received 3 variance requests from the American Legion for a potential new sign located at 355 Broadway Avenue West, which is zoned B1. The first variance request is from Code Section 153-208L7, which requires signs to be 10 feet from the right-of-way. The applicant is proposing the sign to be 5 feet from the right-of-way, therefore the variance request is 5 feet. The second variance request is from Code Section 153-208L2, which requires the sign to be no taller than the lowest point of the roof or parapet. So in this case, that's 14 feet. The applicant is proposing the sign to be 16 feet tall, therefore a variance of 2 feet. The third variance request is from Code Section 153-208L1, which allows a maximum electronic copy of 50%. The applicant is proposing an electronic copy of 52.5%. So the variance request there is 2.5%. So I will briefly discuss some of the discussion regarding the setback height and electronic copy variance requests. Please stop me at any point with any questions you may have. So for some context, the American Legion Post 225 has an existing fenced-in patio that extends south of the principal structure 5 feet from the public right-of-way, which in this case is the sidewalk. The proposed freestanding sign is not going to extend beyond that existing patio. The American Legion Post 225 seeks to place the sign 5 feet from the right-of-way in order for the sign to be unobstructed by 2 maple trees that are on the property. The applicant is requesting this variance rather than wanting to remove those trees. I'm now going to move to the discussion over the height variance. The applicant is requesting a 2-foot variance to allow the 16-foot tall freestanding sign. The applicant wants to ensure that there is clearance for pedestrians that may be walking by on that sidewalk. And the height is to ensure visibility for oncoming traffic on Broadway Avenue West. Jumping down to the discussion over the electronic copy percentage. The applicant is proposing 3 feet by 7 feet of the 40 square foot sign to be electronic copy. These dimensions are considered by the applicant to be necessary for the sign to be read effectively and safely for vehicular traffic. Lowering those dimensions is not recommended by the manufacturer for the speed of traffic of Broadway Avenue. I will then be moving on to the findings of fact. The first point A, the applicant has identified practical difficulties relating to physical surroundings regarding the maple tree, the height of the building, and the speed limit were identified as unique physical surroundings. Moving on to point B, the setback height and electronic copy variance requests are reasonable for the B1 zoning district. Just saying that this sign was not going to stick out as a sore thumb, essentially. Moving on to point C, the applicant believes the growth of the maple trees, the potential pedestrians, and the speed limit are not caused by the landowner. Moving on to point D, the granting of the 3 variance requests is not anticipated to be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to other land or improvements within the vicinity. And finally, staff believes that the variance will not result in any negative impacts to the applicant's property or neighboring properties. With that, I will provide a staff recommendation. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission discuss whether the variance requests meet the findings of fact required in both City Code and Minnesota State Statute. Should the Planning Commission like to conditionally approve the requests for signage at 355 Broadway Avenue West, it should make the motions detailed below in this staff report. At this time, I would like to answer any questions you may have.
Any applicants for the city? I'm sorry, any questions for the city? I'm not sure if the city's hiring or not.
The applicant, for the record, is here as well, so if you have questions for them, they can help you answer those.
Questions of the city? Mike?
Well, I see that they're asking for, the height variance, but yet there's two roofs there. One's like 14, 16 feet high, and then you go west, and that roof's like 4 or 5 feet higher. So what are we judging this height of the sign from? The lower roof?
That
Which
is
what we're doing, or the higher roof? So do they really need a variance for that or not?
Code requires signs to not be taller than the lowest point of the roof or parapet.
Okay.
So that would be the 14 feet is the lowest point of that roof.
Other questions?
So is there an existing sign out there now that this is replacing?
Yes, it's in a different location. It's on the northern edge of the property. A condition of approval is to have that sign removed.
Susan?
Mr. Chair, I have a question of staff that I really cannot do in open meeting. I believe that there is a problem with our agenda tonight that I should have caught earlier, and I did not. Mr. Chair, I move that we have a recess to consider the agenda and specifically the need for public hearings.
I have a motion, I have a second.
Second.
Motion second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We'll recess till about 12 minutes after, this won't take long.
That won't-
The public hearing associated with this. Listed on the agenda, that's correct.
Always good.
call the meeting back to order. To alleviate any suspense out there, we have an issue with this application this evening. Nothing with the application, but the process that we legally have to follow with the variance requires us to host a public hearing. We don't have it noticed in our agenda, so we're not going to be able to complete this application this evening. So we would like to hear from the applicant. We'd like to have a conversation, but when it's all said and done, we're going to table this application this evening until we can properly and legally notice it. I don't think it's going to delay anything for you guys for sure, but we will have a meeting in early January, I believe.
That's correct.
And we can take this back up again. So apologies from behalf of the city to the Legion. You're well-respected members of the community, so it's like, could it be happen any worse group? But anything I need to add, Nathan?
No, I think you got it. The next meeting would be Wednesday, the 12th of January.
All right, so now that we're back and we've got that settled, I think we've asked our questions of the city staff for now anyways. Would the applicant like to say a few words? And if you would, we ask you come up, state your name and address for the record, and spend a couple minutes describing what you would like to do.
Good evening. First of all, the American Legion Post 225 would like to thank the Planning Commission for getting us on your agenda. This project has been about 3 years in the works, so to finally be at this point, we're happy to be here. My name is Pat Silovich. I'm currently serving as the first vice commander on our executive board, been a board member for about 6 years now, and a longtime Legion member. Resident of Forest Lake since Cindy and I moved here in 2008. With me tonight from the Legion, a longtime area resident, Donnie Scow, past commander times 4, district commander 1 year, and deserves to be recognized as the main man for successful fireworks, 4th of July after 4th of July after 4th of July. That's the guy right there. And then Mike Casbohm from Think Digital. Going back to about 3 years ago, we sought bids from 4 different companies. We made the absolute right decision in going with Think Digital out of the cities because of their reputation and their experience. And we didn't make a mistake. They've been just excellent to work with. The last thing on the history of why this took this long, and I won't take any more of your time, is because when we did this work 2.5 to 3 years ago, we were close to the point, we'd secured the bids, we had secured the funding through our club. We were very close to the point of getting on your agenda, and we had a rather devastating kitchen fire that knocked our kitchen out for 5 to 6 months. Well, you don't want to be trying to bring extra patrons in off the street if we can't deliver product. So that put this project on the back burner. We completely retrofitted and rebuilt our kitchen, stainless steel everywhere, secured permits from state, county, local, got our kitchen up and running again, had just started to get comfortable with our new dance steps, and COVID hit. And we don't need to say too much more about what that did to us and everybody else. But COVID aside, we're up and running and on your agenda, and thanks for your time and listening to us.
I believe we're going to have a few questions for you. So if you got a couple minutes.
We have all night. It's taken 3 years. We have all night, man.
Never a good sign. Commissioners?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. The information that you submitted was very helpful to understand the scope of your work, how it would look, and the impact versus the buildings and all of that. So if Think did that, they did an excellent job for you, because there was nothing left as far as questions about how it was. I think it was well submitted. So
Thank you. One thing that I would like to mention with the second variance is the fact that when you're looking at the sign that we hope will one day be approved, the bottom height of that sign would actually end up at 7'7". And as somebody who's played buckets for a lot of years and used to be able to stuff one-handed with a 10-foot rim, the risk of vandalism on a very expensive 7.7 is just too great. So the reason we're seeking the 2 feet is just to get to the top of the precipices that you see on the front, those columns on the front of our building. By just going up to that 2 feet, we take it up to 9.7 and reduce, in our thought, great risk of vandalism, much more than increasing viewability on the drive-by. Speaking of which, we found out when in doing a traffic study those years back that 4,600 vehicles pass that funny-looking building on Broadway every day, and very few know what goes on in there. So another reason we'd like to hopefully be able to put the sign up.
Other questions, comments? Susan?
I really want to support the Legion on this. I'm happy to have brought the Rotary to the Legion, and we meet there every week, and I think that's the coolest place in town. I can support your 5-foot variance. I can do, but considering that we will be setting a precedent with every decision we make here, and considering what we have told previous sign variance requests, I can't support the other 2. What I'm hoping that you'll do is take another look at that, and see if you can get a good visibility with less of the electronic display and a reduced, not footprint, but sign print.
Mike, would you like to assist me? And the reason we came up with that decision, Susan, has a lot to do with if somebody is eastbound heading towards the lake, and they're sitting at the stoplight at 4th Street, they can see the sign and have time to read. But more often than not, the east-west light is green and cars are going by in each direction. The size that we're seeking, and Mike can speak to this far better than me, I'm a retired RN. This is Mike's line of work, because for the 2 or 3 seconds it takes you to drive by the Legion without staring at it the entire time and jumping the curb, the size of the sign and the view lines is important.
And I understand that, and the other businesses along Broadway, along Lake, along 12th, along 15th have had the same discussions with us. Just like I did tonight on the way here, I was looking for a particular place and went by it and pulled the U. And Broadway is designed to be able to, fairly conveniently make those U's. I said my heart's with the Legion, but in terms of this setting a precedent for every other sign request that comes before us, you understand mission creep. There is also sign creep. So I can certainly support the 5-foot variance to bring that out a little bit closer to the curb. And I would very much like to hear the rest of the discussion. But there's just one person here that I don't believe I can support the entire 3 sets of variances.
Other comments for the applicant? I guess my comment would be, I think, to be honest, this will be the first pylon sign that we've put up. And I don't know when. It's probably at least 10, 15 years. Pretty much everything now has moved to monument signs. I'm a little curious why you chose a pylon sign versus a monument sign, similar to what you see right across the street from you guys at US Bank, the new business with the orthodontist. I don't know the name of that plaza. They've all moved to the electric signboards on a monument sign which is lower. And it's just kind of the way that advertising and has gone. So I'm curious why a pylon versus a monument sign?
Well, I think one of the reasons, and again, going back several months, was that when the Golden Valley American Legion Post, which sits right off of 100 before you get to Glenwood, put up their sign, they increased their off-street drive-in, drop-in business by 50%. And that sign is only viewable if you're heading north on 100, not to mention the thousands of cars that go south on 100. So that lone club had that kind of a positive revenue impact by putting a sign up near the interstate, still on their property, that was able to be viewed by all of those northbound cars. They could get off at the next one, which I think is 55, and come back around. So that was one of our thought processes way back then.
Well, again, it's my preference would be to see a monument sign. In fact, I was a little surprised that on Broadway we allowed pylons, and I think we do till to 8th, and then we change zones, and then they're not allowed.
I believe so.
You move to a different zone at 8th. That's the light that no one's ever at. I forget what's there, like the auto parts store is there. That light from
The
there
entrance to
to,
Dragon Park,
I'm sorry?
and the entrance to Dragon Park.
Yeah, whatever. All the way down to Centennial. So that stretch is what the zone, and then from there to the freeway, I believe we're into all monuments now. Now, there's some signs left that are grandfathered in, but there hasn't been any new ones because, like I say, everybody's moved to monument. Personally, I would like to see a monument sign, and I'd be able to support this a lot easier than the 16-foot height one. That's my 2 cents. Nathan?
Just sorry to clarify, you asked a question about whether a pylon sign was permitted in this district, and you are allowed to have one.
In this
The
district.
B1 zoning district, yeah, along Broadway.
For some reason, I thought that all of Broadway had eliminated those, but I'm clearly wrong, and that's okay. Other comments for the applicant? Dennis?
I'm trying to figure out the math on this. I mean, 2.5% isn't very much. But if I take the dimensions of the sign, I'm coming up with like a tad over 44 square feet. And I don't see dimensions shown for just the dynamic part of the sign. But it says that it's 7 by 3, so that's only 21 feet, and that's less than half of 44. I mean, do you have to count the edge or something, or how do you do it?
No, the total square footage of the signs can be 40 square feet. That's the maximum allowed signage in the B1 district.
Okay, so that's why, all right. Then there must be something a little bit, it's okay, it's not, that makes sense. Because I was just having trouble with these kind of non-modular dimensions and those being kind of the holy grail here, and that just seemed unusual to me.
Yeah, the applicant did supply the measurements for the signage. It should be on the yellow diagram in the staff report.
Yeah,
So is the entire sign, what would you call it?
digital?
I think I know what you're getting at.
You know,
Only the
the-
bottom half of the sign is the message board. The top half would be fixed, white print on black. Well, it'll be lit from the backside, but it'll have our,
I thought-
yeah,
you have
I
it-
like that.
I got it the other way. I just assumed it was gonna be the other
But that's an upside down one that we looked at with regards to vandalism. Is that an option to bring, to bring the fixed part down and have the message board up? Vandalism was the only reason we really looked at that issue. Originally, and like we would like it, would be to have the message board on the bottom half of the sign, Fish Fry Friday night,
Yeah.
Art in the Park Tuesday, that sort of thing. The fixed part across the top would give our license, our gambling license number, and it would basically American Legion Post 225 and the Legion emblem. So that part would be fixed. The bottom half
So it's
would
the
be our
opposite of
message
the
board.
way the
It's
the
opposite of a
diagram that
picture, yeah.
is on our. that's
It's
part
roughly
of our
6 by
picture.
7.
But it's flipped.
Yes, oh, I see.
I know, something.
2.5%, it's less than a foot.
Yeah, that's. You can see it there asking for 4.
So if the sign shrinks 2 inches,
Yeah, it's less than a square foot.
2 inches is nothing.
well, we got to get under, right? Under 40 square feet?
Correct.
So we got 2 feet roughly. So it would be on a 7-foot sign, 3-4 inches on the bottom.
Not even.
If I could maybe jump in?
Sure, please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Mike Casbone. I'm with Think Digital Sign, and I'm the sign consultant for the applicant. And just backing up a little bit to the reason for the size we're asking for, and I understand you have things you have to balance too. You've got code, you've been through this, you've made choices and decisions. And it kind of dovetails with the reason that we went with a pylon sign, and it has to do with making sure that whatever we put up there is going to be effective but also safe. And it's almost counterintuitive when we look at the size that we need. A lot of cities that we work with, going back not that many years, these were not very good quality in terms of resolution. And they were a bit of a distraction because they were hard to read. The resolution is improved greatly. And so ultimately, a larger digital display will allow you to convey the message quicker and get your eyes back on the road. For the applicant, in this case, we were looking at the speed limit, the lines of sight, all those types of things. And typically, we like to see, about a square foot for every mile per hour, but we understand we had to scale things down in this case. And it was almost one of those where it's, if you don't have enough signage, you're investing money that should be spent elsewhere because you don't have enough space to have large enough text to convey your messages. But in this case, there's lights and a roundabout, and we thought, that helps somewhat. So instead of people, typically when there's a 35 mile per hour speed limit, well, they're pushing it and they're going faster. And shaking, we all know this, I'm guilty too, right? But so in this case, we thought, well, if we can incorporate images, and images from our experience, you want to have at least 3 feet in height to be able to do that. And with images, you can convey a lot more than you can with words if it's done correctly. So the modules that make up the signs are 1 square foot each, and I think that's in your packet. If we went in order to keep the 3 feet in height, if we dropped it off to meet that 50% of the 40 square feet, well, then we're dropping off a whole row of these. And so we end up with 18 square feet, making it even worse, and just doesn't allow for enough of a message to be conveyed for the time it takes for as the drivers and the viewers are driving by. So that's the biggest reason. And to give you the visual, this is one of the modules. It's 1 square feet. And this is what we're asking for the addition. So they can go, instead of 20 square feet, 21, which give us the 3:7 ratio.
But if you had squeezed the Legion part, the non-changeable part,
Yeah.
a couple of inches shorter,
Yeah.
you could hit that 40 feet.
Well, we meet the 40 square feet, correct?
Correct.
Because it's the copy area, you're seeing some dimensions of the structure. So it's measured by the copy area, static and dynamic. And it can be 50% dynamic. So that's why originally we were talking about maybe going to 42 square feet. We're asking for that, and then it was suggested that it might be more acceptable to go to 40 feet and reduce the overall square footage and ask for the extra square foot.
Now I think I'm clear. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions I can?
So the size-wise, you're only asking for
One of
1 cubic
these.
foot.
Yep. Yep.
It's spread across the whole bottom of the sign.
No, it's literally,
Just one of
it's
those.
just one, because think about it in rows and columns. So we have 3 rows, and we're asking for 3 rows of 7, right?
Right.
So we're asking for 1 full, if we cut it back to meet to get under the 50%, instead of the 52.5 we're asking for, we would in essence have to cut out 3 of these, because then it would be 3 by 6 instead of 3 by 7. And at that point, you're losing a number, 3 full square feet. It could be an image, could be a couple words. And when you're starting with a rather small canvas to convey the message, from our experience for those speeds, then you're really limiting what you can put on the sign and actually making it, people have to, what ends up happening is they try to squish too much on a small area, and then you're distracting people more from the road because they're trying to figure out what it says. It's kind of like the eye test. You go into the eye doctor and you go down to the small size right away and see if you can still do it. Well, you're sitting there and squinting and trying to figure it out. And you don't want people squinting and trying to figure out what a sign says when they're driving.
Other questions for the applicant? Thank you for your explanations.
Thank you for your time.
I guess I could live with the 2.5%. I'm not a real fan of the height. I'm not a real fan of the 5-foot setback either, but I can live with the 2.5%, no problem, but I struggle with, because I think sometimes technology just changes, and welcome to what the new technology is. So I get that. But I struggle with the height and the setback. Somewhere in between there or something.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm okay with the setback, but again, it's the other two that I'm struggling to find that practical difficulty that we have to look for to approve these variances. And Susan, of course, touched on setting precedents, and that is also something we have to consider too. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
And what he's referring to on the practical variance is, or the practical is does your location impede your ability to do the work? Or is it that you want a sign that does this? Sometimes with a variance, they'll ask for a different setback because their slope is so tight. And that's something that the place, the way the ground is structured, you've got so much slope that you can't work with it. Or you're so close to a stream or a waterway or a shoreline. Those are some of the things that the site itself is the challenge. This is one where y'all want the sign, and it's the sign that you desire that is the challenge. So as what we are required to evaluate is what's the reason for the variance? What's the reason for the need?
Any other comments? Dennis?
Well, Susan articulated some of the things that I guess I was concerned about here. I mean, if it were me and I was selling signs, and I'm not trying to tell somebody else how to run their business, but we're talking about taking 5/8 of an inch off of the perimeter of this pole. 5/8 of an inch. They could make a piece of metal that covered that so that it wouldn't even be an issue. I mean, they wouldn't even be asking for a variance on that. The other thing that concerns me is that the rationale for placing the sign closer to the road was because of the trees, the existing maple trees, which is gonna be a losing battle. Those babies are already out of control. I mean, they're huge trees and they're just gonna keep on growing. And it's, so I don't see that as a valid argument for placing the sign closer to the road. I'm just, I drive by it very, very often, so I'm just wondering if there isn't another place where the sign could be put that would still provide the visibility and accomplish what they want to accomplish. I don't know that we can do anything, I mean, as long as a pylon sign is allowed, I don't think we can't deny it just because we don't like pylons, but so that's the pylon versus monument is that's a battle for another day. But I guess I'm still, I guess, troubled by the rationale here. It just seems like this could have been simplified into something, less, than 3 variances. That's.
Mike?
Well, I understand a little bit about why they want it 5 feet on that's on the east end of the building, because the west end of the building actually comes all the way out to the sidewalk. So it does, how it sets in and over. I mean, I can see why, if you're at the lights, if that building went straight all the way down, I mean, it'd be right where the sign's gonna be. So with that west side half of the building sticking out, I mean, I could see why they want that 5 feet. The height, I mean, half of the building is, 20 some feet high, and then the other one is at 14 feet. So they're asking for what, 2 feet? Those cupolas or whatever they are, those little point things, I don't see a problem with that either, but I just wanted to point that out though, about that location, I think could be maybe moved further east. From where they want it now towards that corner of the street, maybe. And then it could also be maybe instead of 5 feet from the curb, maybe 8 feet or 9 feet.
The sign is west of both of the trees, correct? I mean, it sits almost right at where the fence is. Okay. It was just when Dennis had brought up the thing about the trees and where you can see it. From one of these pictures here, it almost seems impossible that you would be able to see the sign looking west if in fact the sign was west of the trees. So I wonder, can you actually see the sign physically in the summertime or the springtime from the east?
Yeah, I'll address that. One of the reasons we looked at that, well, the reason we had to look at it is obvious, sight lines and viewability. At issue with those 2 massive maple trees is that when you look at the number of events that the Legion hosts, the first one and the biggest one that comes to mind is the 5-day, the 4th of July activities, where we have the 5-day carnival out in that unpaved crushed rock parking lot, our east parking lot. And those 2 big maple trees provide an incredible amount of shade in the heat of the day for the vendors that line up. And with the good neighborly relationship we have with Cherrywood on Broadway, they continue to allow us to use Third Street back to their entrance to their property. And those trees are really quite important to us. And we are ready, wasn't ready for it to come up tonight, but it's well and good. We are ready to absorb and had planned on taking care of that this winter, where the one tree furthest, the tree nearest the building has one big outcropping trunk that we plan on completely removing that, and it won't harm the tree at all. And everything that is on the street side needs to be shaved up to get it cleaned up and away from the sidewalk. So when you walk down to the edge of our block, looking back at the Legion, with the trees as they exist now, with the 5-foot setback, the sign is very viewable. And it will be even more so when we take care of those trees at our own expense this winter.
Okay. Yeah, that almost seemed like it would take care of the problem, because from this vantage point, it almost, I understand from displaying that, or to showing us kind of how it's going to look, but it almost seems impossible that you would see the sign from the east, but it sounds like that would take care of the problem, so.
Mhm. We think that it will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Sir?
If I could make one other quick comment regarding the 5/8 across the bottom. Certainly something that's doable. And I haven't done the math, I'm guessing you're pretty close.
Well, it's 144 divided by 240.
Yeah,
It's 240 inches, or,
yeah,
I mean, it's 144 square inches in a
square foot.
square foot,
Yep.
and it's
Yep.
7 times 2 is 14, and 2 times 3 is 6, is 20, times 12 is 240,
Yep.
so.
And so my comment is that if it's allowable, we can certainly do that. A lot of most cities we work with have specific language that prohibits you from doing that. But we can weld the plate that covers that bottom part, make it part of the framing. Assuming that would be acceptable to them. That's easy to do, to accommodate, to get down to that 50%. I don't know if somebody here can confirm whether that would be okay or not.
I think Franny's looking at it now. We can confirm that
Yeah.
at the upcoming meeting.
Yeah.
They can get you any information that you need.
All right, great, thank you.
We will end up with a motion to table tonight, so in a sense, you got our free input tonight, because often we make a variance decision the same time we hear it, so we will resume with this in January, and we would encourage you to take what we've said into consideration and work with the city and see what you can come up with. You know, the Legion's a great asset to Forest Lake, and we don't want to see a sign. You need to understand that signs are probably the most painful thing we deal with. And the gentleman on the left there is laughing, and he can say it's probably the same in every community. They're just brutal is the only term I have. So we wish you the best, and we'll see you in January. And the chair is looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, oh, it's been a long day. Mr. Chair, I do make a motion to table this until the January 12th meeting.
I'll second.
Second.
A motion and a second. This is a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for your time this evening. Next on the agenda is 356 12th Street Southwest, Target Store Site Plan Review.
Thank you. Target is requesting a site plan amendment to allow additional curbside pickup parking spaces. The site currently only has 8 curbside pickup parking stalls. So this new request would the new layout of the parking lot would reduce the total parking by 6 spaces, just because of the spacing of the access aisles within the new layout. So that would be a total of 624 parking spaces. The applicant is also requesting the allowance of 12 signs designating parking space numbers to indicate pickup parking stalls. Also a curbside pickup beacon and a new crosswalk from the store to the new curbside pickup parking stalls. No other site improvements or exterior building extension are proposed in this site plan amendment. I will briefly discuss some of the items. Also, feel free to stop me if you have any questions. For the setbacks, lot size, and building placement, the proposed site plan amendment doesn't alter the setbacks, lot size, or building placement, and it was a part of a site plan in 1999 that was approved. Regarding parking and circulation, the curbside pickup stalls are being shifted from the north side of the property. They're being shifted north, so they're currently on the south, and then they're going to be shifted north, so additional parking right there. If you see your screens, you can see that. So they want to be shifted north to provide a path with minimal obstacles for Target employees running out those orders. The proposed parking stalls are approximately 9 feet in width, which meets the current standards of the zoning code. Regarding signage, jumping down to the bottom, a provision in the zoning ordinance allows for signage in parking areas when necessary for orderly operation of traffic movement. So in this case, that signage is going to indicate where those pickup parking stalls are for customers to easily find them. The site plan amendment does not alter the trash enclosure, the lighting regulations, or the landscaping regulations for the site. So we're really just looking at that additional curbside pickup and that signage. The recommendation is the Planning Commission should review the proposed curbside pickup parking stalls with the accompanying signage. If the Planning Commission finds the request to conform to city standards, the Planning Commission should motion to recommend the site plan to the City Council for approval, subject to the conditions listed on the staff report. And I'd be happy to answer questions.
Any questions for city staff? Mike?
Well, every time I look at this, I see that the crosswalk for the people, they're coming out of the Target store, and then they've got the crosswalk at a 45-degree angle coming to, the middle of the parking lot. And wouldn't it just be easier to make that crosswalk straight across and move that, all that parking, just move it north one section? Now you've got a straight shot, everything's in line. I mean, it's just my personal view of this. Then you don't have crosswalks going from one side of the parking lot all the way to the other side to another system, and I don't know, it just seems kind of weird.
Mike, I think they're trying to preserve the straight shot for customers and making the angled shot for their staff.
But there's still a whole nother row of parking.
Another double row.
Yeah, to the north. There's 2 sets there. That's just a crosswalk is what I'm saying, is if they move all those stalls north one section, to me, it makes common sense that it's just a straight shot. Everybody's there. You can drive in and out on both sides. A lot of parking for the employees, but it's just a personal thing. That's all. I noticed that, and it just doesn't, you go to most stores, it's a straightaway shot for all the pedestrians. You're not going at a 45-degree angle for the handicap and pedestrians and, just the entrance, that's all.
If I may comment on that,
What?
go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay.
Justin?
Just in response to that, I personally, just because my second home is Target, basically, taking a left on, or if you're coming from the Walmart way and trying to take a left, my only guess is you're probably going to have a hang up there for people wanting to turn left if those were moved north a little bit. And I know that sometimes gets congested a lot. And that would be my only thought of why it might be better in that location. That's just my first glance at it.
So I'm just trying to understand what you're saying. You're saying that would be the case if we moved this further to the north?
I think it would be a little bit more congested because when you
Okay.
have the traffic coming in from the north side, and if that was moved to the north, you're going to have people turning a left to go into those parking spaces. And then it's just going to create a little bit more congestion in that turn area.
Backing up on the road
that make
between
sense?
Target and
yeah.
Walmart.
Yeah, but the two stop signs could still stay in the same position, just the crosswalk would be straight, and then the parking for the delivery would just be moved over to the north one. I mean, the stop signs would stay in the same place. They wouldn't move.
Okay,
He's
well,
saying-
that I get, but I guess I'm just not saying where it come, well, we can talk about this later, but.
Just straight down.
Well, right, yeah, but he's saying that there's going to be
It
more
takes it too close to
congestion.
the street
Yeah.
that divide between
Would
Walmart
be
and
stacking
Target.
space.
And people,
But the stop signs, if you look at this one here, these stop signs would stay in the same place. You'd straighten out that parking, and then here's your delivery.
Oh, you're saying because people are gonna have to stop anyway for that.
They
for
have to
crossing.
stop there anyway, so
Yeah.
here's your
Well-
crosswalk going straight up and down. I mean, it's a minor thing, it's
Yeah,
just something I
no, I hear what
noticed
you're
that,
saying now, I hear what
you
you're
know,
saying.
it's to do with angles and numbers, and yeah,
Yep.
that's,
Other questions for the city? Is the applicant here?
We don't know that the applicant is here in person. I don't know if they RSVP'd online either, you know?
I don't believe so.
Dan,
Oh.
would you know?
There's a Julie Nash Smith online.
I don't think so.
Okay.
They didn't let us know if they were interested in participating. So we can't really speak to the circulation, the vehicle circulation on site. But if there's any other questions.
Any other questions, comments? If none, chair is looking for a motion. Approve or deny or table. Ms. Young,
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the site plan amendment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is number 8, DigniCare. It's a memory care project. It's also a site plan review. Nathan, I believe you're taking us through this?
Yes, that's me. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. DigniCare is the applicant for this site plan review request. The owner of the site in question, which is currently unaddressed. The PID is located for you in the staff report there. The owner of this site is Fenway Investments. The zoning district for this particular site is a general mixed use, MU2. The future land use for this site is also mixed use. So as stated, the applicant is DigniCare. DigniCare and the applicant is here this evening and they can describe their operations in more detail to you, but they do provide memory care, specifically high acuity assisted living and a chronic care case management. And I would encourage you to let them present, I guess, more on their business and their business model. I do have a little bit more here to present though, so for the staff report. So in terms of the zoning review for this site, the use does appear to meet both the zoning district's allowed uses and also those that are guided for in the comprehensive plan designation. The site does appear to meet the specific performance standards, lot size, lot width, setbacks, building height, maximum impervious. In terms of design, a design review is included as part of site plan review. So aspects of the proposal have been reviewed by staff. Those include building fronts, the uses, accent materials that are proposed for the facade. You can see on the screen here. The finishes, specifically some of the, getting a little bit more into detail, higher other class materials.
excuse me.
Any, I guess, the building, so various features of the building were reviewed, including the building roof. The site design is also looked at in a kind of a comprehensive manner. There are a number of criteria that the Planning Commission needs to consider. Those include the orientation of the structure in relation to adjacent properties and roadways, facades, the visual continuity of the site and how it relates to those surrounding, pedestrian entrances, etc. Staff also reviewed, so those general site design criteria did appear to be sufficient upon staff's review. The lighting plan and the trash enclosure, both of those were reviewed by staff and they appear to be sufficient. Landscaping was also reviewed. Of the required trees, there are 50. The applicant is proposing to plant 52 trees on the site. None of those trees go over that 50% maximum with respect to species, so that's good. The site will include all additional landscaping, including shrubs. They'll establish, obviously, turf on the site, and they'll have irrigation to support all of those plantings. They will also have 2 water features that are proposed on opposing sides of the site. Signage was reviewed by staff and appears to be in compliance with the sign requirements for this zoning district. Parking was reviewed by staff according to the city code. The number of required stalls for this site are exceeded by those supplied by the applicant. The city staff had an opportunity to review, so the city engineer provided comments in the memo dated November 29th. Public Works Director did have a comment on the site plan review, and it was just that a grinder pump would need to be installed to make the site compatible with the city's sanitary sewer system. Fire Chief did make a comment as well, requiring an additional fire hydrant to support any firefighting, not that we're hoping to do any firefighting on the site, but to support that if it's necessary. And then the watershed, I understand the applicant is likely in the permitting process with the watershed as well, so they'll have an opportunity to review. There are a number of considerations the Planning Commission has. Staff have reviewed the site plan requirements and do support approval contingent upon the criteria, or the conditions that are listed in the staff report. So the applicant is here. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to take those at this time.
I guess we do. Susan?
I'm having trouble figuring out how this is oriented on the site. And to the northwest, that's where that big apartment building's going in, correct?
The common bond.
Common bond apartments.
Yes, so there's apartments going in north and west of the site. That would be correct.
So the site's got kind of this home plate sort of shape to it. Is the driveway and the wings of the building pointed toward the point of home plate, or is it pointed toward the apartment building?
So you're talking about this traffic circle or this?
Yeah, does that point toward the apartment
It
building?
points towards
or
Headwaters
the-
Boulevard.
Pardon me?
It'll point towards Headwaters Boulevard.
Face south.
It's south.
Headwaters Parkway.
It's in
Yeah.
it's in the,
Park. Yeah,
Okay.
Headwaters.
Okay.
the north, the true north is straight up on the drawing. So
Yeah.
even though everything about the site is skewed, the north is still straight up.
Somebody else had their hand up down here. Mike?
What was the pump you were talking about with Public Works? What was that pump?
Called a grinder pump. It
grinder
grind.
for the
Yeah.
sewer, okay.
Yes, for the
Okay,
sewer.
Okay, I understand. I know exactly what that is.
Without going into further detail.
I missed the grinder part.
Susan?
Could you refresh me, please, on how we determine the parking requirement? Because I guess if there are 8 staff persons there at any one time, that would be 8 stalls. And then we assume that only 3 people ever get visited at one time, like on Mother's Day or the day before Christmas, or
Yeah, so we use the standards that are provided for nursing homes, sanitariums, and those similar uses. So that's just what we're reviewing against. The applicant, I believe they're suggesting the number of stalls they believe they need. I would refer you to ask them that specific question.
Well, what is the,
What's the required parking
Yeah.
based on? What did you use for your required parking?
$11 stalls are required per review.
Thank
I
you.
was wondering what the criteria was.
It's nursing homes and
Yeah.
similar facilities.
So we're using a similar type of
But is it
use.
based on staff or?
No, this is
Beds?
provided in city code parking requirements. So we took the requirement from city code parking requirements.
Yeah, I understand that,
Sorry.
but there was a rationale for that.
Yeah, like,
Yes.
does it go with the number of?
Is it the
units
number
that
of
are in the
beds, number of
facility versus the
staff?
number of
Yes,
employees?
yep. So there's, it's based on both the number of beds and the staff. Thanks. Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood your question.
Other question, F? And the applicant is here. We ask that you come on up and state your name and address for the record, please, and spend a couple minutes telling us about your application.
I'm Brian Wingus. I'm with Dignacare Senior Memory Care, 3900 Van Dyke Street, White Bear Lake, Minnesota. And I'm also the founder of Sweet Living and Comforts of Home. You've probably seen a bunch of those buildings up over the years. So I've been doing this for now, geez, it makes me feel old, but about 23 years. And you can see by the model and the look of the building, that high memory care, high acuity building. I've been doing these buildings for literally 23 years in various iterations under various name brands, and pretty much stuck stubbornly to that model. And in fact, was actually thinking of maybe getting out of this particular model and trying to figure out how I was going to work with the home care and that kind of move towards bringing care home. And that move, I saw that move coming actually prior to COVID. But when COVID hit, I saw what we didn't know before that. How are we going to keep people from getting trapped? How are we going to go towards touchless faucets, touchless switches? How are we going to make sure that every suite had its own air supply, in the HVAC system? So I suddenly saw, oh God, I can raise the bar higher again. I can fix what we hadn't thought of before. So we added every suite has a magnetic lock exit with a keypad, so we can, even in a lockdown, we could let family members in to see their loved ones, and that those exits actually exit to a secure patio. And we changed the HVAC systems to a VAR system, so it's high efficiency and things of that nature. We have the touchless delivery system for each suite. We set the bar higher. We're going to be the new kids on the block, but we're going to be the cool kids on the block, if you will. So we will have those features that will be very, very attractive and new in the marketplace. We're doing one here, we're doing one in Eagan, we're doing one in Orlando as the new prototype. It's going to be, we'll be able to do things with the Medicare Advantage plans, which is, as we all know, everybody's joining those. And as they carve home care into Medicare Advantage, we're ready for it. We've got the new team has people who have been working with Optum and United Healthcare and some of those plans. So we're excited to be here, and we're excited to make Forest Lake, the headwaters, one of the key premier new sites in that manner. And we'll still be taking care of memory care and segueing from the high acuity, high care management, even into that chronic case management, remote monitoring, the telehealth. We've always had an on-call doctor as part of our strategic team and hospice, and we're always worked closely with hospice and respite, but But, so we're trying to do some things that are going to take us into the next paradigm, if you will. And so really, that's what we always have done, that's what we will do, and we will continue to do and make things better. And we want to do it here in Forest Lake. So I hope that gives you a quick kind of down and dirty look at what we have done and plan to do. I can answer any questions.
Susan?
With the folks that you are working with, what are the special things that you've done on this site to provide protection so there's not a, I don't want folks getting to 61.
Okay, so we've really never, to speak of, had anyone get out, okay? It's a secure memory care pod inside a secure building, okay? And I'm not a big fan of wander guards per se, but because we use the keypads, because we use the mag locks, the delay egresses, and even in all of the suites, you would have to defeat, in the memory care, you've got the double door before anyone would get out, okay? And it's controlled not only at the keypad side, but also through the nursing station, okay? And then you've got that's the memory care pod. So there's almost a triple protection of anyone getting out. You've got all the cameras too. It's completely cameraed up on the outside. If anyone got out, we'd know it, number one, and we'd instantly be on them. I don't know, I'll use like a bear on salmon kind of deal, but we the whole idea of these models, and we do care, not only do we do cares that I would never do in a 60 or 70 bed building, because it's not managing the unmanageable in a situation like that. That's what we do best. That's why we keep these buildings small in that community. A 14-bed memory care pod in a 32-bed secure building, because we want to keep an eye on things. We want to make sure we're always controlling the environment. So we would know somebody's gone lickety split. But in that even in the secure area, they would literally have to defeat two separate ways or secure, egresses, so to speak. So nobody's going to be getting out to 61. I mean, I can stand here and confidently say that.
But just to clarify, you have one locked door and then another locked door just to get out of the memory care unit?
Yes, so basically it would be three for them to get out in any direction. Yes.
There's only one way into the memory unit, correct?
Only one way in through that.
Okay, but there's two doors that you have to go through just to get into the memory unit from outside.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's interesting. I did home nursing for several years, and so I just have never, I don't think I've ever seen actual double door with two locks.
Well, you'd have to come in the front door and then you'd have to go into the memory care pod.
Oh, you're saying, okay, I see
It's
what you're
a
saying.
secure memory care
Sure.
pod inside a secure
I see
building.
what you're saying. Okay.
I'm curious on that you have these, it looks like on the floor plan, separate patios outside each of these rooms?
And that's a secure patio, right?
So there's a wall around it or something?
Well,
So-
it's kind of a fence, so that you could still get out to the patio, but then that's got a keypad egress. And
You get out
entrance.
onto the patio?
There's a keypad to get onto the patio and a mag lock on it that's controlled not only by the keypad to get in or out, and controlled by the nursing station. I mean, short of the fire egress, we could disable that keypad too. So that gets you out onto the patio, and then there's a further keypad egress to get off of the patio.
So they need to be granted access out to the patio?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
A building this size, how many employees are on staff what's the most employees on staff at one time?
The best ratio, I would say, would be maybe during the heaviest part of the day. Lunch is usually the heaviest part of the day. I would say 8 to 10.
8 to 10.
Yeah.
'Cause I was looking at the parking, the
The parking, the way it's laid out, it comes from building after building after building of history. And if we needed more parking, it's not like we don't have room. We put it
Oh, no.
there. And so that's just using historicals, so.
Thank you.
Other questions to the applicant?
I just
Geneva?
have one. Is the eventual, like, I guess I'll call them clients, are they all privately paid? Or is there going to be a portion that might go to citizens who run any type of public assistance?
We always have about 20% that we set aside for Medicaid, and people think we're nuts, to be honest with you, because as you probably, if you don't know, I'll tell you, most of the big places won't take Medicaid. And we tend to look at it a little differently, because some of the best referral sources are those county case managers in the hospitals. And once they know that we're the go-to guys for high acuity, well, turns out we take CADI waivers, TBI waivers, the CAC waivers, and these. Well, because we're the go-to guys for those high acuity people, it turns out some of those county waiver people end up paying more than the private pay. And you can call me nuts all you want, but that's what we do. We take the people that most people don't take or don't want because they can't handle them. And so that's our job. We take people who need care, lots of care. And subsequently, obviously, nobody drives. We don't need any extra parking spaces for that. But it's an end-of-life model. And, call it messy, call it, a lot of work, call it whatever you want, but there's a need for that. There always will be a need for that, even with this movement of taking care to home, bringing cares home. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, high levels of behaviorals, all of that stuff is still very, very hard to deal with at home, even when you're bringing home care home, end of life, things of that. There will always be a need for this level of care in that size of a building where you can actually manage the unmanageable. Does that make sense? And that's why we're pretty convinced that we'll stand the test of time. We've been standing the test of time for an awful long time, and we do it well. So
This is a concept plan.
no, we've been doing this for
Okay.
same building. I haven't changed the building much, and I'm not changing it much except doing some improvements.
I was looking at the staff recommendations and it said,
Other questions for the applicant?
I just have one more.
Yes, Judy?
Sure.
If there turns out to be a need for additional parking as time goes on, would you have the spot for it and a plan for it? Because I can see as more people are going into hospice type settings and things like that, the volunteers that go with them do need places to park. And I just am, with looking at the number of staff that you have and family visitors and then visitors for things like that, ministers or whatever, this does not really seem like enough parking to me.
Candidly, it doesn't, we're not saving a ton of money. We could easily. There's sites we have had where we pigeonholed them right in there. And by need, we wouldn't probably, but we could if we should or if we needed to. We didn't think there was a need, and we don't think there's a need. We've over and over and over and over again. It's just not a thing that if we felt we needed more parking, we'd do it. It's nothing we're running from or anything right now.
And it looks with the setbacks and everything, you have more than enough land if you do need to expand it.
Yeah, we'd come to you and ask. We don't want people parking on the lawn or over at the bank or anything like that. That's just plain silly.
Right next to an apartment building that already will have some parking challenges, so.
Sure.
I just wanted to make sure that you had enough on site in case there were folks that wanted to visit.
If we thought we'd have a problem, we'd already be talking to them. I did, over in Roseville, I made a deal with the church and we had a cross easement and life was great.
Other questions for the applicant? Thank you. We may have more later for you.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
We'll bring it back to the commissioner. Questions for the staff, the applicant? Or
So what's your timeline?
Now, if we get approval in the January cycle, or I think that's kind of what we were aiming for, we break ground as soon as we can. We're ready to go. It's all gung ho.
Other discussion? Hearing none, the chair is looking for a motion.
We're excited, put it that way. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we should do whatever we have to do here, approve this site plan review process. Is this something that carries on to the city council, or do we have the final say on this one?
This is final say.
No, that would be correct.
Yeah,
Final say.
okay. So my motion is to approve the site plan as submitted with, I should have had the conditions here in front of me.
Page 50.
Yeah, the six, including the 6 staff recommendations.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Welcome to Forest Lake. Item number 9, Shadow Creek Estates. It's a concept plan. Nathan, are you handling this?
I am, yes, thank you, Chair. The concept plan that is the subject of this item is on the screen for your review now. Just as some background information for the Planning Commission, this item was kind of preliminarily reviewed at the last Planning Commission meeting. The applicant for this development, his name is Todd Christensen. He is here with us this evening in support of this concept plan review request. I think the Planning Commission is all familiar with the location of this property in the city. Again, it does abut a state and a county road. So those are considerations that are included in this report. Zoning, again, multifamily for this property, and future land uses are mixed use and high density residential on this site. At the last meeting, the Planning Commission did provide some feedback to staff that it had on this particular concept plan. Staff later scheduled a meeting with Washington County staff and the developer to kind of discuss their comment letter that was previously supplied to the Planning Commission. Access was one of the main considerations from them. Staff did provide other concerns to the developer for this site. Those things include setbacks from the abutting roadways, access to the apartment structures that are proposed on this site, non-conforming lots that are currently seen here on this concept plan, comments on wetlands on the site and needing to be careful about those and the buffers that may be required for them. Additional concerns that weren't discussed at the meeting but would ultimately need to get worked through are the parking and circulation requirements specifically for the apartments. Those requirements may necessarily drive changes to how the overall site is configured. Another thing is that stormwater requirements would also be expected to perhaps drive some of the arrangement of the lots or even the apartment buildings. So definitely things to work through in the future. As next steps here, the applicant at this moment with the land uses that are proposed would be expected to go through a number of different entitlement processes. Comprehensive plan amendment will be required for the mix of land uses that are on this concept plan, along with a zoning map amendment to rezone a portion of the site. And then the sort of more standard process, which is a preliminary plat along with a planned unit development for the deviations that are proposed for the lot sizes, and then the final PUD and plat. So that's kind of the preliminary review that staff have done on this concept plan to date. Staff recommend that and again, concept plan review does not have there's no legal decision being made by the planning commission. It's simply feedback for the developer. So staff do recommend that the planning commission provide the feedback that developer is looking for. So that's all I have formally prepared for you for a presentation this evening. I'm happy to take any comment or questions.
Nathan, based on your comments and looking at the map here, or the site plan, it doesn't look like anything changed from when we saw it, what, a month ago?
Yeah, that's
And based on Washington County's input on ingress and egress, et cetera, I'm a little surprised we're seeing this plan at this time with none of those changes. Can you speak to that, or is that something I should ask the applicant?
I think that's a fair question. Staff did recommend that the applicant revise the concept plan. Applicant did request to be on the meeting this evening, but to the extent possible, we're trying to provide at least some information in terms of review. So I think that would be a good question for the applicant.
Other questions of staff? The applicant is here. Would you please come up? We'd ask you to state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Todd Christensen. I'm representing CDC Consulting, 7800 Pearson Way, Fridley, Minnesota. Thanks for hearing me tonight, Planning Commission. I'm not looking for a formal approval, and we did not change the plan because there's just some things that I need to get a better feeling from you people, and some questions I need answered. We did a couple of design. I've probably done 8 designs on this project. There's a lot of constraints to deal with here. It's a difficult site with the wetland locations, restrictions from the county, from the city, collector roads, wetlands. There's just a lot to deal with. And so instead of going back to the drawing board and bringing in front of you a couple of plans that I have, I just felt like I didn't want to take it any further without getting some feedback, because I'm just wasting time and money. So I have some real concerns and some questions that may or may not be able to be answered at this time. First of all, we're looking at a multi-use site, as Nathan has expressed, and we have a business there now with the Moore Farm that you guys are all familiar with, which the longer that we spend, the more time we spend on the project, the more we're finding out, more about the property. And, really, quite frankly, traveling around the metro and talking to people, I can't tell you how many people I've run into since I've started this project that have driven their kids up to here for lessons on horses and competition and so forth. The Shadow Creek Stables is actually a equestrian farm and a lesson-based business. So just a little background, my wife and I have 8 grandchildren in Forest Lake, from a senior in high school to 6 months old. And we have been spending some time with the Moores, and we've decided that we are going to try to occupy this property and continue the business as long as the facility can handle it, or until we decide to do something different. So we've looked at some ghost plats and some different ideas. We want to make sure that when the time comes, that it can be developed. But when that time is, I'm not really sure, because there is, you have a house that was built in 1908 there that they've spent a tremendous amount of time, effort, and money, restoring the wood to its original state, added some lead glass windows. They've done a lot of work on the house, and it's borderline historical. It's really very impressive. It would be a shame to just tear it down. One of the options that my wife and I are looking at is possibly picking it up and moving it, for some time. Because the real problem that I'm dealing with here, and I've been doing this my whole life, I'm scratching my head because the county highway department, we've kind of come to a compromise on an entrance that I think can work for everybody, and that's pretty much where the driveway is now.
The Shadow Creek driveway.
Huh?
The Shadow Creek driveway.
Yes, correct. And the problem is there's a 200-foot stacking distance from the curb on the county road to what we would be the first time we could make another road come off it. So if we come up on that driveway 200 feet from the curb of the county road that exists now. We're 30 feet from the porch of the house, you know, on the other side of the curb. So, in an effort to make it all work, I'm hoping that I can get the county to back off the 200 feet, maybe to 180. And maybe we can come up and tee the road right there, not build anything to the east, but have the ability for the, you know, the stub road to go that way to serve a future development. So what I'm looking at is a road that would come up, take a hard right and go into the apartment complex and then swing north, kind of close to, you know, it'll be a little bit farther towards than where it is now. And basically follow a little bit of the same path. There's not a lot of options here. You know, when you start coming off the wetlands 135 feet and you're coming off the property lines 135 feet and you start working your way in, I mean, you just, there's really not a lot of imagination that can happen beyond what we've tried to do. I've tried to get as much density as I could. I have a project in Chisago with 50-foot wide lots that sold out in 30 days. There was 32 of them. That's on the first fairway of the golf course there. Some of the builders that are there looked at the site. They love the idea. They like the idea of a 60-foot wide lot because they can put a 50-foot house on it. I do have a couple of examples that the builder wanted me to bring along. If you want to see them, I can just show you the front elevation. But they're 2-story homes with 3-car garages, you know, $400,000. What we're finding now is that when I first started doing these developments with these detached townhomes, if you will, my mind was that they were for people like me, 55 and older, don't want to do the yard work anymore. But what we're finding is that the millennials don't want to do the yard work either. And a lot of these homes are being bought by younger families that just, you know, don't want to participate in the things that our parents did or that we do. So it's really changed in terms of the economics of who's buying these homes. So as you know, there's a lot of these projects going on around the metro. I've got one down in Timber Grove Heights with 40-foot wide lots with $500,000 homes going on them. It gets a little crazy, I know, but that's where the market is today. You know, obviously the cost of building has gone up, and hopefully that'll come down a little bit. But you know, you're looking at startup homes at $350,000 and up now, and that's just where the market is. I like the idea of the 60-foot lot because I think it gives a, you know, it's a bigger feel, and I think it fits the density as much as we can. Now, if you take the, you know, those 3 apartments that we threw in there, we just did that so you could see that, hey, we're looking at apartments, and you know, obviously one of the big questions is that going to work? And looking at the density that we got in the review from Nathan, you know, if we put in 2 56-unit apartment buildings, you know, with rooftop pool and, you know, nice apartments, and then do the 58 lots that you see here with another 20 when the farm's developed, you're really getting close to about 8 units an acre. I think that we can probably get those apartment buildings a little bit bigger, and maybe we can get them up to 130 units. But again, we run into issues with engineering, you know, stormwater retention, parking. You know, the initial proposal here for these apartment buildings, underground parking. Well, we already know that's probably not going to work. It's just the water table is too high. But we can probably do a half underground garage, which you see a lot. So there's a lot of things that we still need to work on, but I just need some direction from some input from you guys and gals, and then tell me, you know, what you think about where we're heading, and if it's a direction that we should continue to head in, working with city staff, which they've been exemplary so far. I know that Donovan being gone has created some issues, but Nathan has stepped in and I think done a fine job so far. I have a couple of specific things that I should just maybe just go through those real quick, and just so you got an idea of some of the questions that I have and see if we can answer any of them tonight. One of the real things that I'm struggling with is the city in their reviews commented that they want an additional 12 feet of right-of-way along Goodview. And that's a lot of land. We're paying $1.7 million for that property, and I don't see the need for it. You already have the sidewalk there. I don't see any additional right-of-way being taken to the north I don't see any improvements in the road in the future being made. We're already been restricted to one access on Goodview instead of two, which we really would like to have two. And so I don't know what the value is or what the reasoning is for an additional 12 feet of right-of-way. So I guess I'd like to know that answer if possible. And I don't know if you want to address that now or if that's something that maybe nobody knows.
That'd be something that the city engineer would have to address for you.
Okay.
And,
Yeah,
and this community and these areas are going to grow. And you're going to have first, with the high school, I drive that 3 times a day, every day. And with high school, with developments that are going in further east on 202nd, I would be very angry with the county if they were to have an additional driveway there on 202nd.
are we talking about 202nd or are we talking about Goodview?
Well, good view on the 12-foot, but it goes into the amount of traffic that you're looking at. I expect that Goodview will eventually be widened.
How? There's no room to widen it. How are you
That's
going to
what
widen
the
it?
12-foot, my guess is that's what the 12-foot is.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
all the way to what? You got a 100-foot lot to the north there,
probably close to the high school.
and you're going to take property from homeowners?
The city engineer's comment probably came from the transportation element of the comp plan, which calls for a certain designation of.
Yeah.
I mean, I
roadway.
could see leaving some room for a turn lane maybe down at the bottom, but I mean, 12 feet the whole way seems kind of aggressive.
Huh?
Seems aggressive when you can't take any property to the north of that. And that's a lot of land. And then additionally to that, we've got, we got driveway setbacks and other things to deal with. So I really have a pretty strong feeling about that. I don't have a problem with the right-of-way that the county engineer is asking for, or the county highway department. That makes sense, but I've driven Goodview, I've looked at the future developments on Goodview, and I don't see how Goodview is ever gonna be widened. I mean, to go from 2 lanes to 4 lanes is gonna take a lot more than 12 feet. I've been doing this a long time. So that's just, so I'll be working with the county engineer, but ultimately that's it's a decision that's made by city council and recommended by you people, is the way I understand it. So, the 12 feet is an economic issue. It's a planning issue. We're trying to meet density requirements and it seems aggressive. It doesn't seem necessary. The sidewalk's already there. There's no way to take property to the north of that. You've got people that live there and they have lots and they're not, that's not going to be easily, you'd have to condemn it. So that's really a concern of mine. That's probably one of my biggest ones. The 60-foot wide lots we've gone back and forth on whether or not to have an HOA. There's advantages and disadvantages to that. Obviously, the disadvantage is it increases the homeowner's monthly expenses. We're not opposed to an HOA, but we're not necessarily proposed either. We're going to come up with, kind of a final decision on that, and obviously that'll be, up to you, you people too, to recommend to let us know what you would rather have. So I think that's something I'd like you to think about in terms of that. The density itself, once you include in the review on page 3 there from the November 3rd staff meeting, it talks about the density at 1.80 units an acre, and that is true based on those current comps. But again, if you add the apartment units, the possible future development of the farm, we're at 7.6 units an acre. The only other thing that I thought of is, I can't really point at anything, but that cul-de-sac on the north up there, on the northeast where that wetland is by the mini storage. Maybe that's fourplexes, around that. you know, we transitioned from the apartments, maybe to some fourplexes, and then, you know, bring it into the single family kind of around the park there to kind of meet up with those other homeowners on the north. So that's, you know, something that we can look at, and we have builders that are interested in that. The apartment complex, I think would be best served with just 2 buildings, but if we went to a third, I mean, obviously we're up to then 170 some units, 180 units. That cul-de-sac goes away. So, you know, I've kind of gone back and forth on some of those things and trying to, you know, come up with the best use for the property. I mean, that's my job, you know, as a planner, surveyor, and engineer. I mean, that's what I do. And it's just, I really got kind of, I think I've looked at it too long. I actually have been looking at this property for about 4 years. I made an offer to the Moores earlier this spring, and we came to terms this summer. And we're, my wife and I are looking at occupying the property for at least maybe 10 years and keeping it going as the business that exists today. I feel like that's a whole nother discussion in terms of the horses and the livestock and all that kind of thing. You know, because it's, you know, was it grandfathered in? Where do we go with that? What do we do? I just feel like that's going to be separated off in the plat, and that should just be for another discussion for us. I don't know. What else did I have?
So you're looking for 6, you're looking for 60-foot wide lots, and looking at just the lot diameter sizes, look down on the 8,000 square foot area. This zone is 80-foot wide lots, 15,000 square feet. It's quite a decrease.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that fits the density that the city's looking for. You know, it's zoned for that density that's much higher than what we're looking at. So I'm not really sure.
Susan?
As I look at this, I think you're trying to do too much with the property and the topography and the wetlands. Just because there is a maximum zoning or not maximum density allowed does not mean that you have to meet that maximum density. We're not asking anybody to say, yep, you have to go right up to the top of that maximum density or else we're not gonna.
Yeah.
I think, I think that you're really trying to shoehorn a lot in here on a property that maybe, you're right, has some challenges, and you would have better products if you weren't trying to do so many things. Mr. Moore knows that requirements for horses are, you gotta have 2 acres per horse. And I'm not sure where on this plan you would be having that for the number of horses in an operation today, or similar to what is today. Because then you get it, especially in an area that is growing and you're putting a lot of houses in, you're dealing with manure management, you're dealing with fly management, you're dealing with all the things that come with the horses. I've got foster horses, so it is what it is.
Yeah.
While I was visiting my daughter, she is in a subdivision with the 2-story homes with the 2 and 3 car garages. And I have lots of pictures, because after people left for work, the number of cars still on the flaming streets, they've had trouble getting emergency vehicles through. There's just, there's not enough stacking in driveways anymore for the number of cars that those young families that you're talking about with, you know, the 2-parent cars and the toys and then the 15 or 16-year-old with their vehicles. There's just not enough room. I guess I would like you to think about if you're looking to put apartment buildings on here and you want to maximize your density that way, then you've got some opportunities to use the property and maybe put your apartment buildings differently. if you want to have single-family residence, then, you know, some of the things that you're doing with the cul-de-sacs make a lot of sense. But I think you're trying to do too many things and saying, okay, I have to meet this maximum density. And I don't think that that's something that we're saying you have to do. You don't have to go up to the maximum density. I grant that that's where your dollars are.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I'm not trying to reach that, quite honestly, and I'm not even I'm trying to satisfy the city's request to meet that, is what that was my impression was, you know, we want density.
Well, in this
And-
area, we do want an increase in density.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah,
This
and
is
so,
MXR1, we have water, we have sewer.
yeah,
We've
and
got a
so
lot of
I'm
market
looking at
rents
a,
going up now.
I'm looking at a transition along 61 where you have some, you know, couple apartments along the highway there, and then, you know, a small buffer, and then moving into some, you know, higher density, single family residential, detached townhomes, if you will, or single family, whatever you want to call it. It's a little unclear as to the definition between the two, because in your own document here, you have single family detached homes, but I noticed that it said with no HOA for minimum requirements, and I was confused by that, because I don't know how you have a detached townhome without an HOA. Then it would be single family, but it might just be an issue just with the document. So, yeah, you know, we're looking at the apartments along the highway and then single family. I don't know that we're trying to, it does look a little busy on this plan, I'll grant you that, with the way it's laid out with the apartments there, but, and we do have to address the circulation of those apartments and the entrance and exits, which will be part of the planning, of course. And there is gonna be some changes in the plan, but I didn't want to go through that whole process, Susan, without hearing some information from you and the staff regarding that, because it's just, you know, to do all of that work and then come in front of you and not have anything that works is frustrating. So I really wanted to work with the city, planning commission, staff, council, what have you, to you know, work through this project and come up with a nice project for the city.
Dennis?
You know, I appreciate your candor here, you know, in talking with us, you know, kind of where I'm coming at on this, you know, it's quite a thing to try to get your arms around this whole thing, but I'm just, and I'm not looking for your secrets or anything like that, but I'm just, obviously, you know, the lot size or lot width, you know, is an issue here, and lot size and that sort of thing. And that's one thing that I'm still trying to kind of get my arms around. This whole issue with the 12 feet on good, addition, taking 12 feet off of this site, granted, it's a lot of land, but I mean, the way that you have this thing laid out here now, it would only impact 2 lots. You know, all of the, you know, from the bottom, almost 3/4, the south 3/4 of that, none of what you're proposing along there would make any difference if it was 12 feet.
Yeah, we
If it was
haven't
12
really.
feet less in width. And I realize there's principles and things involved here.
Sure.
And that sort of thing as well, but I think we've got to figure out a way to kind of lessen the, you know, it's just like this thing we had earlier tonight here where somebody came in and asking for 3 variances, you know, and I just don't think they needed to, you know, and I'm not saying that you don't need, but I mean, there's a lot that we're gonna have to go through here with you on this, to make all of this stuff work, and I'm just, I'm trying to figure out, I mean, I haven't, and I rarely do this, every once in a while I will, I'll sit down with a plan, because it's, you know, I'm in a related field here, I'm not a developer, but I'm an architect, and so I work with areas and square footages and stuff like that, and layouts and planning and shoehorning and fitting and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just trying to, it just seems to me that this site is large enough. I realize we've got some issues with the wetlands that we have to, that are gonna drive a good bit of this. But as I look at this, and I haven't put the pencil to it, I'll admit that, but just kind of looking at it in terms of kind of where you might kind of move things or, massage things a little bit to get rid of these, even asking for 20 feet. I mean, can you figure out a way to do this thing so that you don't have to ask for a 20-foot? How many of these things are, these things that you want are absolutely essential to making this thing work? It may be, now I realize there's two things here. One is making it work and the other one is optimizing it. And you have to be, we have to be concerned about making it work. Optimizing it is more kind of your bag than it's ours, although we are in this particular area concerned about density. But I'm just wondering if when you come back again, if there I think the staff has done a good job of kind of pinpointing what the pinch points, that's what I'll call them, are here, the things that they're concerned about. So how are we going to start eliminating those so that you're not coming in here asking us to approve a whole bunch of variances or changes and that sort of thing from the way this might be able to work?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate those comments. In reviewing your MXR1 zoning that you're looking at, that you guys have done the workshop on and stuff, under the detached townhome area of that, the 7,500 square foot lot with a 60-foot, 60-foot wide lot seems like we would fit that.
Proposed one, or is that what is existing?
Existing detached townhome.
I think,
I wouldn't argue that point.
Yeah, I'm thinking, trying to figure out where we fit in, from, we're not looking to, in the staff review, I mean, there was numbers in here of 300 and some units and 500 and some units, and based under the existing zoning of 10, 20, 30 units an acre, I mean, that would be nothing but apartments out there. I don't think the adjoining landowners would let much.
And we're not,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not looking for that.
Yeah, okay, and so that's, but you like the apartment idea, do you think
Well,
along the highway?
I think this is a large enough site that can be made to work.
Okay, and then, from the standpoint of the single family, HOA, no HOA, is that, where do you guys sit with that?
I don't think that's as big an issue as
Okay.
some of these other things. I think we've got to, I we have to deal with the entrances to the site.
Yep.
I think we have to deal with the lot size. To me, those are probably the two biggest things that, at least that I can't speak for the whole commission here, but that's what I'm kind of looking for here, is that if we can mitigate some of these different things that you want to do by coming in with a layout that doesn't ask for a 25% variance. And I'm not saying it does, but
Yeah.
25% variance or in lot width.
So would we, and maybe this is a question for Nathan, I mean, is this MXR1, and I'm having a hard time saying MXR, but is this MXR1 zoning, is that available to us for this project?
Yeah, I can comment on that. I mean, basically looking at the concept plan, we're trying to understand how we would, because currently this land is guided as high density residential. So if you're proposing to put single family on this property, we have to look at how we're going to have to re-guide or provide a new designation. And so that would likely be low to medium density residential. And so that would be within the MXR1 zoning district.
So the property being zoned high density residential, which then coincides with the numbers that you gave in your, the 10 units an acre, or what have you, right? I mean, is that correct? Because then, I mean, Susan, to your point, there's no way to get there under that zoning that it currently exists under with that number of units. I mean, I'm trying to
with a
get
lot
to
of-
8.
With the multitude of single families and still carving out
Unless we go to,
enough room for, horses and 2 acres per,
yeah.
and your arena.
So I'm thinking like, I mean, is it 4plexes then? Okay,
Mike?
Well, you see where the 2 apartment buildings are? And you've got that proposed street C coming in? You could, I mean, just my opinion is that whole street could be 4plex, 8plex, 6plex, all going into those apartments, that area there, and then the rest of it, single family.
this stuff up on the north,
Yeah, everything to the east of there.
yeah.
I mean, it's just that way you get the high density. And then that's pretty much narrows everything down to that one area. So if you want to do any type of HOA or anything like that, you kind of limit it to that one area, and it's just an idea.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly brings the
Well,
density
you'd have
up.
to change the lot sizes, instead of 53 feet,
Yeah.
spread
Well,
them
and the
out.
one thing too is, it's always, I mean, in any kind of planning, as you guys know, I mean, you try to start with the high density and move into, as you move away from a major road or into a residential area that exists to the north, you want to kind of move into it slowly. And so I felt like we were approaching that, and I think that the drawing on the north there, that northeast corner up there, I did have another design where the road came in a little bit further to the south and the 2 cul-de-sacs punched to the north, but it was not as economical as this one. The problem being too is crossing that wetland, trying to minimize any wetland mitigation. But I did look at bringing the road in a little bit differently in terms of where it crosses a wetland. But I think you're right. I think, Mike, in terms of, I mean, I feel like, with the park up there and the homes, that has to be, single family or detached townhomes, if you will, whatever. But something along those lines. We're really looking at 2 apartment buildings, so that one you see on the north there, one of my plans had kind of slid that further south building, kind of angled it, and then dropped the other one down a little bit, and then that room, that cul-de-sac stayed up there on the north for the most part. A lot of ponding up there, a lot of ponding along the highway, just a lot of ponding, period, and that's, once we get into the hydraulics of that, then that'll kind of dictate what we can and can't do too.
Susan?
When you come back to us, I just want to make sure that this flows so that folks can get in and out of here. Realizing the number of people think about 37 o'clock in the morning, getting folks out of here, trying to get emergency vehicles through curves and cul-de-sacs. In your high density, in your apartment areas, just making sure that you've got good access in here.
Yeah.
And more than one little way in.
Yeah.
And that same little way out.
Yeah.
And that is already a challenging intersection at 202nd and 61.
Mm-hmm.
And it would not be good to make that any more challenging
Yeah.
than it is with additional entrances.
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, I think when the fire chief looks at these diagrams of those apartment buildings, he's gonna say, there's no access for fire prevention on the other side.
Right.
On the 61 side, we have a 100-foot ladder truck here, but if there's anything on that 61 side, how are they going to?
Yeah, they won't let us enter it on the 61
Well, that's why I'm
side.
saying, maybe think about that, because.
Yeah, well,
Get the truck around the building.
That's kind of what, in one of the plans of the 8 I've done, I have, you come in and then you come out on the north.
Because
You know, so you can, you know what I mean?
Down from Headwaters a ways across from the, what is that, the YMCA. We put in some buildings there and they have, it's basically a walkway for all the tenants of that, but it's accessible with a fire truck.
Right.
So they can get to both sides. And
Right.
then they'll also prefer a fire hydrant somewhere back on that side.
Yeah.
It's just
Right.
something that's gonna pop up.
Right.
Typically, when we see a concept plan, the developer is, and you've done a lot of development, has flushed it out pretty well, and we're sort of sanding around the edges
Yeah, yeah.
to fit what we need as a community. This is, don't take this wrong, this is rough at its best.
Yeah.
We know these roads are gonna move. We know the access to these apartments are gonna move. I don't see any parkland in here yet.
No.
All of that. So you got some free information tonight, and you have fulfilled your concept plan requirement to see the city. And the next we would see then would be a preliminary plat. But you're gonna sink a ton of money into a preliminary plat. My suggestion would be to have another concept plan review after you shake this out and save yourself a fortune.
Yeah, our plan was to come back for the January meeting with another plan that we can hash through, and we have exhausted a lot of resources already in planning and design and engineering. One of the issues in just one of the other comments that I had, and maybe more for the engineers and maybe not even appropriate right now, but there's sanitary sewer that was planned along 202nd, was planned some time ago. And when the engineers plan that, they look at the property surrounding it and they plan it with the idea that, we're gonna do an 8-foot depth, which is what basically the whole 7-county metro is. And I noticed in here that they want 10 feet of cover. And that the engineer said that he doesn't think there'll be enough depth to reach the sewer to the northeast corner of this property without, with a 10-foot bury. I would agree. We've already done that research. We can only get there with 8 foot of bury at the end. So that's something we're gonna have to work through. Maybe we put a blanket over it, so, but it's tight. It's tight. So that's something we're gonna have to work through, but we gotta get sewer up there no matter what's there. So that's something we'll have to address also with the engineer. Now, there's things we can do over the top of the sanitary if it's required because it's only 8 feet deep, but something we're gonna need to address. I think that's really, if you just would give me just 1 second in case I know everybody wants to go home, so.
Oh, we got another agenda item.
Okay. Jim, was there anything else that you would like to add? Jim's my partner.
I'd just like to understand.
Would you please come up and state your name and address for the record, please?
James McKinnon, 1805 West Lake Street, Minneapolis. Am I to understand that your density numbers, Todd, in the documentation you gave me today, were not a minimum requirement? And
Nathan?
Sorry, if I could just jump in really quick. So the density for this specific property is guided for in the comprehensive plan. Now, if a comprehensive plan amendment is gone through for this development, as it may need to for the land uses that are proposed, that would change the required or the range of density.
what does the density number mean?
The comprehensive
330 some
That's
units.
the most,
Pardon?
the most.
There's a minimum on the high density though, right?
Yeah, so the
We have a
comprehensive plan
range.
guides for a range of density from, I think it's 10 to 20 units per acre, 10 to 15 units per acre.
But what does that mean, 10 to 15 per acre? Is that a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 15? Or is that anything in between 10? I mean,
Yep.
Yes.
As long as it averages somewhere over 10 and under 15, about. So 10.8, 11.3, any number. So this was zoned the front part of this property that abuts Highway 61. And I think that's that line that goes, there's a line on here, right, Nathan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right here.
That line to the west is zoned for 10 to 15 units per acre. For the apartments, where you're looking to mainly put your,
Okay, so that's zoned minimum of 10, maximum of 15.
yes.
And what's the zoning for the east parcel?
That's,
Mixed use has a density of 10 to 15 units per acre. High density residential has a density of 15 to 20 units per acre.
Okay, so are you telling me that the eastern piece is 10 to 15 and the western piece is 15 to 20?
Yes.
So that's not what we were saying. We were saying 10 to 15 on the west.
But if, as you look at this property, and you think that you can bring a better, more saleable product, as Mr. Moore knows, it can be rezoned. You can ask for a rezoning. Those things are possible, but we
just-
know that you have a desire to
Mixed use.
get the best return on your investment. And yes, we have, our comp plan says more apartment buildings. I think that folks on the planning commission have heard that there's a community desire to not have quite as many as in the comp plan. But, you know, kind of, what do you want to do with the property, but then it has to be a good product.
Okay.
And my concerns right now with the way you've got your apartments are, is you try and do the apartments and the single family, and I'm concerned about your flow through
All right.
and safety.
We are not a large, highly experienced developer. I used to be a real estate lawyer. Since I've retired, I've done a fair amount of development, mostly smaller projects, 30-some lots over in Centerville, 30-some lots in Chisago. I did a 14-lot villa home project in Minnetonka, a 13-lot villa home project in another western suburb. And over the years, I've done some smaller projects. I don't do big ones. This would be the biggest one I've done. I've never done a commercial project. And trying to think, I don't think I've ever done an apartment project. We're working with an apartment developer on this. I'm wondering if this might not be something where the apartment developer takes the existing zoning on the adjacent to 61 piece and Todd and I take the acreage that's to the west and try to do a more traditional single-family, no variance project.
You're going to need to make sure that that property to the west has access. The apartment properties are going to need access.
Okay, and the lack of access comes from the fact that the existing access now is via the westerly piece off the county road. And there's only one.
yes.
And the staff report says they won't allow another one. Is it, okay.
Well,
And-
there's a little bit more to it than
Yeah, you
that.
can come in from Goodview. You come in from Goodview.
You can see that this has a lot of doing and needs to be doneing.
Lot of ifs, lot of ifs.
So,
Understand, we're trying to prevent exactly what you mentioned. Spending a fortune, coming in with something that gets kicked out. We're trying to figure out what we can live with that's gonna be approved and do our engineering and our surveying and our designing once.
and so the suggestion that I would make is that you come see us in January with some other sketches that help you out with your road access issue. This is a major stumbling block to this project is road access. So until you as developers decide how you're going to handle that, the planning commission isn't gonna be able to move forward because we're gonna say, no, 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 no. So you've got to figure out how you're gonna get in and out of this place. And if you're gonna have apartments, how are you gonna get in and out of those? If you can answer those questions, we can probably sand around the edges and get the rest of it with you. But those, you guys have to answer. We can't answer that for you.
Right, and am I correct in saying that if we can resolve the access issue for the high-density western parcel, you're likely to want us to come in with something that has apartments, townhomes, fourplexes on the westerly piece, and then you're comfortable with single-family lots on the easterly piece that have the width that don't, lot widths that don't ask for a variance.
Those would be 80-foot wide lots. Then.
Right.
So you're
And
gonna,
that's,
But that
And-
would blend with the developments there to
Yeah.
the north.
and that's what you're comfortable with, generally speaking?
well,
I
that,
know
that's
there's no
generally what
guarantees,
the
but
current zoning is. So yes, we're extremely comfortable. If you want to do tighter than that, the process through that too, so. But I really think you need to, as, I forgot the gentleman's name, Todd, you know? I have it written down, I just can't read it. You know, you got to figure out if you can make money at it too, we understand that. So, you know, when you guys go back tonight and have a cup of coffee and talk about it or something else, you know, that's what you guys really need to figure out is, can we make money on this property and how do we get there? And we're gonna need road access. Park board, you're gonna have to go see the park board. They're gonna talk to you about either land or dollars. And
yeah,
then
we,
this-
we understood it was pretty clear that from the staff report that they wanted dollars, and that's why we didn't put a park in the design.
That's
We
not
got
an
that
issue
big part there.
with us.
Okay.
It's an either-or thing.
We just wanna know.
Yeah.
That's
The other
what we
thing,
want.
the other thing that I think you need to come with a little bit more clarity on is this whole staging thing and this desire, this obvious desire to want to keep the horse ranch part of this thing, at least for a certain length of time. I think that has created some uncertainty here on our part as to what that actually looks like, would look like in transition.
What if you were to start with a clean piece of paper and say, okay, on the western edge, we're gonna do apartments, and so I'm gonna get an access to the apartments, and you're gonna work with some other apartment developer to deal with that. And then, once you've got that access, then you plan the rest of your spokes or curves or cul-de-sacs off of that, so that you're just looking at it from a different way. And I know that sometimes I get into something and I keep trying to tweak the design that I had in my head. But if I start with a clean piece of paper,
Administrator Casey?
Yeah, I have a couple suggestions. There are a lot of moving parts, as the committee knows here already. Notwithstanding a comp plan amendment, no matter what happens here, and getting it approved and getting the Met Council to comment on the change of density, which will be interesting at some point. But what I would like to recommend is that the applicants work a little closer with the staff to flesh this out, because I don't think we can get this back by January once we have a new concept and do the review. So I think January is not doable. I think if the applicant will work with the staff, Ryan, the engineer, Nathan, and whoever, we can get closer to what it may be more an acceptable development. Because what I don't want to see it is, if we keep coming back every month and you have to tweak everything, I mean, you're taking a lot of the committee's time that really doesn't need to happen, because we have professionals on staff that can do the work and bring that forward. That's what I really like to see, is that we take a step back, get it at the staff level again, and let us try to work through all of the issues, and I can't even count how many issues there are, but there are that many, so that we can come back to the committee with a little bit more of a succinct and cleaner concept.
Correct.
maybe thinking of it as three big areas. And you know, leaving your farm area as it is, that's one area. And then you've got an area that are 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever apartment buildings. And then you've got an area of single-family homes or townhomes or whatever. But thinking of it as 3 chunks instead of trying to pull lots of chunks all in together. Did that make sense?
I think about it as 3 chunks. And my concept might be, my concept on the farm piece was that that would be phase 2 of the residential development, and there'd be a holding period. Mr. Christensen and his wife were planning on moving in and operating it the way it's operating now for a few years, while we sold through the lots that we were developing on the north. So that really is not that complex. What was a little complex on the western piece was we weren't sure whether we would want to do apartment buildings all the way south to north, or leave part of the northern piece for a villa home project. That's easy to draw out and easy to explain. Let me ask this. Am I to understand that staff is keenly aware of what the Planning Commission feels is the right thing for this project?
And as a staff member, I say we're probably closer to knowing what the Plan Commission will accept than the applicant is.
There's no question about that.
So, and you know, I don't know what your prior development experiences have, but we have staff members who will work with you as much as they can to come up close to what you want. But with a plan like this, you know, we can't bring this, if we bring something like this back to the committee, we'll be right back again.
Every month.
Every month, and it really will be a waste of the committee's time to go through this plan after plan after plan. So if you can work with, and sometimes you may not like the answers we give you, but that's part of the process we go through all developers. But what we will do is say, here's the zoning for the west piece, here's the zoning for the east piece. This is what current code mentions that it has to be. Can you meet that? And if the answer is yes or no, we'll then go whatever the decision tree is after that. So if it's no on the eastern portion, then we'll say, okay, what do you want to do? And here's what you have to do, and here's what we think we can get. So, you know, my recommendation is really pay attention to what the staff is recommending and work with them closely, because they're good staff and they're professionals and they can actually help you more than they can hinder you.
Well, I agree with that, and I like your plan.
Nathan, remember that you can have one of those chunks, keep an interim use? We do have that in our code.
Point taken, yep.
Well, thank you for your time coming this evening. I'm gonna let you go and,
Look forward to seeing you soon. We will work with staff, and we've been working with them, and
excellent.
continue to do so. Thank you.
Have a good holiday.
Thanks very much.
You as well.
Next item agenda is the MXR1 discussion. Nathan, I believe you're taking this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This item here. I have a presentation prepared. I'm just going to briefly cover a couple things that were requested from staff at the last meeting. A couple questions relating to this topic. One of them was specifically regarding accessory dwelling units. We did kind of look into what other communities did in terms of how these units are counted towards density, and we weren't able to find much indicating that they would be counted towards density. In fact, we received some replies to the contrary. A couple theories on that. First is, you know, tracking ADUs is more difficult than platted units. So that might be one reason why they're not conventionally counted towards density. Another is simply that they may not be a reliable indicator, as they may sit vacant for periods of time more often than, for example, like homes or rental units, conventional rentals. So that's just a little brief answer for you there. The other couple questions will be addressed here in this presentation I prepared in the staff report. And then a really quick note for you. I think we've covered this in the past. Density. The current standards in the MXR1, there may be some misalignment with the actual future land use designation, but as we've talked about, density can be viewed by communities on the aggregate, so it can be made up for elsewhere. And so I think that's where the questions came from with respect to the high density units that are in the city now. So here again is the future land use map the city has. Guidance in the future for specifically for low to medium density residential is again a 3 to 6 unit per acre range. This map shows, and this was included in the staff report, it's sort of small on your screen, but you can see the units that have been added to the city since 2011. Fun fact for you, the bulk of these units have actually been added in the last 5 years. So this is the table that kind of summarizes that information for you. Apologies, this wasn't in the staff report, but again, it does show that a lot of the units, the vast majority have been added in those last 5 years. So just in trying to think about these standards, I just wanted to make sure that we're all crystal clear in what we're talking about here. And I know the Planning Commission is quite experienced with these, but I did want to just kind of really briefly touch on this. This is kind of what you would consider to be a standard lot, quote unquote. You know, I say that quote unquote because there's not many standard lots. As you know, there's a lot of things going on out there in the world. But anyways, so you can see here, you've got the public right-of-way, you've got the street, and then you do often included in the right-of-way have a distance beyond the curb that's in the public right-of-way. It's, so in some cases, it's utilized for road expansions. It's there for the public benefit. That's where the property line starts here, where you can see the cursor is. And from the edge of the public right-of-way to this blue line on the screen here, this would be considered your front yard setback. The orange lines, dotted lines here on the screen, from the side property boundaries is to the side yard setback, which runs into the property. And then you can see a red line indicating where the rear yard setback on properties is. In the MXR1 zoning district, the side yard setbacks are 10 here. Front and rear setbacks are 30 feet. In the MXR1, there's also a lot area requirement of 15,000 square feet. That would be for all property boundaries. And you can see shaded in this property, there's a sort of green gray shade. This is used to depict more or less standard easements. So drainage and utility easements are also required, as you know, on platted lots to ensure that basically that the drainage over the entire landscape works, as well as in the front yard, specifically utilities use the front yard drainage and utility easement for provision of utilities. So these are all the things that we're considering when we talk about these standards. Here on the slide and in the staff report are the existing lot standards. One of the questions that was brought up during the previous agenda item was, what is detached townhomes? What does this mean when it says HOA? Detached townhomes in this context, and this is a nebulous term right now in development, but detached townhomes in this context mean a smaller lot. They don't necessarily mean a specific type of or style of house. In this case, it's the size of the lot and the standards that come with it. Where you see an indication of no lot area requirement if there's an HOA, that is sort of an abridged paraphrasing of what the requirements would actually say, which is if there's a common ownership of, for example, a large area and then there's building pads, we don't have, a minimum lot area is sort of moot in that case. So you have instead no requirement for that, because we're assuming that you're going to be over a certain acceptable amount.
All they're essentially buying is the pad that
That's
the house
correct.
is on.
Yes, that's correct. So in the staff report and here on this slide, staff are proposing, or just basically for the basis of discussion, supplying something to consider in terms of how to amend this zoning district. Staff did kind of sit down as a team with various staff members and kind of worked through what these might mean. So really the main change here is to lot width and lot area. Those two standards, if they're changed, would bring this district a little bit more into alignment with the future land use that accompanies it. In the front yard, setbacks are proposed to change so that houses, the actual living area, could be closer to the street, but your garage setback would have to remain 30 feet in order to accommodate parking.
Nathan, before you go any further, what is the difference between a single-family home and a detached townhome then?
Yeah, so a single-family home is a single-family lot as opposed to a detached townhome lot. It's primarily a distinction in size.
No. The actual building that's built on the lot. Are they one and the same?
Yeah, a detached townhome is essentially a single-family home. An attached townhome would be a
Detached townhome, I get. This is detached townhome versus a single-family lot. Why would we want that? I guess just to be able to shrink the lot size?
Right, that's the idea. So there is a requirement to have at least a 60-40 split between larger single-family lots and the smaller, what are called detached townhome lots. And that's the intent of that, is to provide a variety of different styles, you could say, but it's more variety of lot sizes.
Thank you.
And most of those do have an HOA, those detachable townhomes.
Yeah.
'Cause you're not allowed to do this or that, or, you can't change anything.
Yeah, something developers are doing a lot in order to, for example, there's a big market for folks to downsize. And a lot of developers will use an HOA as a way to manage common areas and things like that. Any other questions on this slide before I move on?
Well, just one other question on this whole HOA thing. I mean, is the HOA thing, is it anything that's designated by the city? I mean, does the city have any requirements about that?
No, this is a reaction to whatever the developer is looking to do.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
try- yep.
to me, it's a semantics thing. It was a way to kind of get around this smaller lot for single-family homes, and so you give it another name, and that, I have no problem with that. But what I was just looking at some of your, your things in parentheses here. So on this middle column here, detached townhome, the lot area 65 to 75, none if HOA, none what?
So,
No minimum lot size.
Okay, so that is what that's saying then?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's all I
All
needed
that they're
to know.
buying is the pad, and there is no minimum, they're not buying a lot. They're buying a pad, and so there is, right, and so there is no,
So are we defining what that pad size is? That this looks like we're calling out a lot area. I mean, if that's the case, Susan, why don't we just specifically call out the pad size or the pad area? I mean, I was just trying to
Right,
understand
right,
why,
and that's-
why you don't have a requirement if you have an HOA. I mean, what,
and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm trying to drive around as many different areas and as many different styles right now as I can, and I found the pictures that I referenced earlier. And basically, the homeowners association will decide whether or not you've got, who's gonna mow this, and you can't have flowers here, and you can't have a vegetable there, So you can have a whole mess of homes really close together, as long as you meet your fire requirements. But there's no, like, apartments with benefits.
yeah,
A house
Okay,
with,
so-
a house with a smaller yard.
but if we don't, so when somebody comes in, I'm just trying to think, okay, somebody comes in with a subdivision and they want to do detached townhome lots, they either have to meet this requirement for area for the whole lot, or they have to come to us with a plan that shows what they're gonna do, and we're not, and basically, this is saying that there wouldn't, they wouldn't be limited to. Let's see.
55-foot distance, yeah.
So is
If
it
there's an
just the air, is it just the air, so, okay, so you're saying both the lot width and the area are flexible if you have an HOA?
So if you have an HOA, you're only gonna buy the structure.
Okay.
Yeah,
It
I
may be the
understand.
driveway, but you
So
still
it's
have your
like-
setbacks for each of the buildings.
yeah, that's correct. So it's not like there's no performance for the instances where there's larger common areas that are commonly owned. It's just that the lot, specifically lot area, because detached townhomes could mean smaller lots that are owned and maintained by the property owner, or it could mean a detached townhome could also mean, an actual detached single-family product that's within a commonly owned area. So
It's just those two things, it's just the lot width and the lot area.
you're still,
that are
right, and there's still
where
a,
you get the flexibility, not in, I mean, setbacks and all that, you still have to maintain all of those things,
Absolutely.
right?
yes, there's still a setback between structures and all of those good things, yep.
Okay. So it isn't a free-for-all, and I knew it wouldn't be, but but that you still can maintain, some semblance of order here, with the setbacks from lot lines.
Oh, I'm sure we'll come back to this
Okay.
slide, but.
Yeah, no, yep.
This is kind of the crux of the whole discussion when it's all said and done.
Yeah, and I'll be sure to bring it back to this slide after, after I've shared the rest of what I had prepared. So, another question was asked, you know, what are we looking at here, right now in the city? And you saw one of these this evening, that would be Shadow Creek. We've got a number of 3 other subdivisions that are somewhere in the concept plan process or somewhere in process. That's not to say there couldn't be more subdivisions out there, but we don't have applications for them at this time, so that's kind of where we drew the line. Anyways, a number of units total here. You've seen Hidden Creek at a previous meeting. You saw Shadow Creek and Birchwood Estate. Well, Goodview Preserve is one that will be coming at a future meeting. We don't have a concept plan from them yet, but we know there's somewhere in the range of about 100 single-family homes. So
which one is that on the plan here?
Goodview Preserve would be here, be north of the Shadow Creek Estates development that you just reviewed.
Okay.
So
Where you were.
we have an application from them at this point, but we don't have an actual plan to review at this time. So number of developments that are somewhere in the pipeline, and here are what they're asking for in terms of lot standards. And so I thought this was going to be something that was informative to the Planning Commission, because you can kind of get a side-by-side comparison of what developers are asking you for in specifically in this zoning district. So the ranges in lot area from Hidden Creek, which is within a PUD area already, to Birchwood Estates has some of the larger ones. They're still well under the 15,000 square foot minimum lot area. You're seeing a range of requests from 60 to 65 to 70 feet in lot width. Front yard setbacks.
Hold on one second.
Go ahead.
Nathan, if you would. Just to make sure everybody knows, Hidden Creek is in the Headwaters
It's
development.
that Taylor Farm piece.
Yeah, which isn't part of the original Headwaters development PUD. So they have these smaller lot sizes already approved.
Yeah.
With that PUD. I just want to
In
make sure
parts
it's.
of that PUD area, not the whole PUD is not all smaller lots.
But there's a
Yeah,
percentage.
there are a
Yeah.
percentage.
Yeah. That's why it's not in blue.
Yeah, and I should say that any of the cells that are shaded blue are where deviation would be required from the actual current standard. So, side yard setbacks, you're seeing a range of requests from 5 feet to 7.5 feet, standard being 10. Rear yard setbacks are mostly within the actual current standard. And then specifically with the Birchwood Estates project, they'll have to request a couple of deviations for detached townhome products, so smaller single-family lots. So these are what's been recently requested. And then the last slide here that I have in the presentation is simply something that the former zoning administrator had created, and this is a comparison of zoning districts in peer communities that are seen as somewhat analogous to the MXR1. And so you can see there's a range of different minimum lot areas. Ramsey is really small in their R2 district, but a lot of other communities are a little bit closer to coming up towards 7,500, 10,000, those types of lot areas, minimum lot widths, a wide range in those as well. So that's kind of what I had prepared for you in terms of information. I'm going to bring it back to this slide here that has some of the, just again, for the purpose of discussion and questions.
Did I see in the stuff I looked over this weekend that essentially MXR is about 60% of our developable area? So whatever we decide is going to be our MXR standard, that's going to be the vast bulk of our development. And so this is what Forest Lake will look like in the future. And so as we think about it, what do we want our community to look like? What do our existing residents want the community that they bought in, that they thought that they were getting to be? And how do we set ourselves either just like everybody else or as a unique community? Because whatever we decide here, we've got a little commercial, maybe what, 10 or 15% commercial, and then we've got a lot of apartment areas. But the majority of almost all of our residential, if it's not an apartment, it's gonna be this. So I just wanna make sure that as we think about these standards, what that is, and Patrick, sir, what that kind of density is going to mean for the services that this community is going to have to provide.
Consideration on police services, fire services, plowing. I mean, very clear, you get more dense, you have more people, you have more demand, you have more impact on roads and parks and everything. I mean, it's just.
So where did you come up with your 50%?
In the documents that I reviewed this weekend, it was in this.
Yeah.
60%.
I think it's in the
is-
comprehensive
Yeah,
plan.
60% is MXR.
That's of the
So what
residential
do you-
development
When you
expected.
say developable land, how are you defining that?
Not ag and it's not swamp.
Okay, so it was this, I understand the not swamp, that's real, I mean, I understand what the swamp is, But that's why I was just curious about this ag side of this.
Okay, we'll take my place, all right? There is no way in my lifetime, my daughter's lifetime, or her grandchild's lifetime that water and sewer will ever go out to that property.
I'm not
And there's a lot
arguing
of-
that,
And there's
yeah.
a lot of our city on the eastern part that is that way. It's well out of
No,
what
I'm
Louisiana will
not,
ever be.
I don't know that we need to argue
Yeah.
that tonight.
Okay. That's what I mean.
Right, so we're taking, I was just curious about that. I understand this MXR1 standard is going to be important in the overall scheme of things here. I just hadn't seen it, put that quite that way, but that's quite revealing.
It's table 214. I don't know the context around the anticipated residential development. This is yanked out of the comprehensive plan, but 59% would be the low, medium density. But again, the MXR1 is our sewer to water area. Everything else that we're discussing east of there, for the most part, it's all east.
Right. Yeah.
Or low density, where you need a septic.
And a well.
And a well. Yeah, and there'll never be water out by my house before I die either, so join the crowd. I'll live to tell the story for a while anyways. So you're right, Susan. I mean, this is a big area of development. So do you have a conclusion you wanted to make?
Right now, I want to listen to what other folks want. I think one of the things that you first said when you came onto the planning commission was, how do we determine, as we make a decision for this big honking chunk of land, how do we know what the rest of the community wants? It's harder than heck to get our residents to comment on this until after everything is developed, and then they say, why'd you do that? Why'd you
Well,
have
but
all those
that's-
apartments?
They've never had to do that.
Right.
I mean, just take myself with my work, I'm closer to this kind of thing than probably 90% of the population. And the people that I rub shoulders with They never bring this up. They don't talk about this. I don't have people ask me what did you talk, what did you do at planning commission tonight, that sort of thing. So
better friends.
this whole idea, this whole idea of getting people to respond to what they want is, I'm not saying that we should stop trying to do it, but it's a losing battle. It was like those maple trees, but it's like those maple trees by the Legion. We've already lost that. I mean, they've already lost that battle. Those trees are growing so fast that, the size that they're growing so fast that they're drought proof and that sort of thing. But I hear what you say to us, not over and over again would be being unkind, but you remind us, let me say this, you remind us regularly of that. But there's part of me that says, I want to keep things, I want to figure out a way to keep things going. And, that's the tough challenge that's part of this. If you're going to get pressure from the developers coming in, I'm guessing that this is just the beginning of this lot reduction, this pressure to reduce the size of lots. And, I figured this thing out that when we got to this point in this comp plan thing, that this was going to be one of the battlegrounds. Not that we're gonna, fight tooth and nail over it, but it's a big deal. How do you, if we were the only community, if this was the only place, it would be much easier to make those kinds of decisions. But we're not. There's 20, there's 20 communities in this 7-county metro area that are dealing with the same stuff we are. And I don't know what the answer is, but I hope we can somehow figure out a way to strike a balance here so that we can keep the developers coming. Otherwise, we're going to lose the infrastructure battle. That's what I think anyway.
Just the opposite from my point of view, because, okay, here's the deal. We pull this number of families in, and we pull this number of homes in. We're not very far, maybe 5 or 6 of these developments, where we're gonna have to look at full-time firefighters, and we're gonna have to look at a significantly increased police force. That's general fund money. And if you are spending money on general funds for police and fire and snowplow, then you are not spending general fund on roads. Because
So what's the
because-
answer then to keeping up? Well, let's just take the roads. I mean, that's the most visible thing, is the roads. How do we keep up on that?
That's the challenge where you look at it almost every year, so.
Yeah, it is.
It's not easy.
Well,
I'm not looking for fast, easy answers. I realize that's one of the tough things, but we're not, it isn't just Forest Lake that's not keeping up. I mean,
I think the reality is, even if we shrink our lots down, most of our land has a fair amount of wetland on it. You're never gonna hit the densities. I can't remember the last development we did that came in with standard lot sizes.
or with no wetlands.
I think you're gonna have a pretty fair amount of, you got flat, pretty decently developable land in this area.
But
And
what
for
is
sure
the
down there in
land-
the purple.
you love my purple.
I hate that purple.
Get over the purple. So, but my point is that we don't have any developments that I know of that we have stuck to the 15,000 square feet in years. And they've all shrunk because they've got wetlands, you can't get another street in there, whatever it might be. We don't hit the our density is, we can't hit 3. with our current, we're what, about 1.8, 1.9? You have that number off the top of your head, Nathan? And what's our average density on these developments? 1.8, 1.9 units per acre?
Yeah, I mean, off the cuff here, it would be below 3, definitely, probably somewhere around 2, yeah.
That's not very dense. And I just, I understand that we have the struggle of, we've got rural and we've got urban, and urban is knocking on our southern door. You know, with Hugo and you go down Lino, I swear them lots are 5 square feet, you know, when you get down by Highway 14 down there.
Is that development in Lino there, you know, right next to 35E on the west side? Is that an anomaly or? I mean, my goodness.
That's what you're looking at here.
There's a dozen houses always under construction down there.
And there have been
Forever.
summer and winter, COVID, no COVID, you know, it's.
This is what's selling. So the really question is, do we want to increase our population or not?
Well, that's kind of what I'm listening to this discussion and I'm hearing things about, you know, like lot sizes and all of that. We want to increase things, but we want to keep the rules so much so that people can't really get what they want to buy. And developers can't develop what they can sell. And I think the dynamic of the future generations is this downsizing model, and not as many big homes and not the big yards, which then translates to less of a rural type atmosphere as the city grows. So ultimately, are we trying to tell the city what's best for it? Or are we going to let the residents, by the nature of their dollars, tell us what they think they want, at the risk of losing some of the people who moved here 10 and 20 years ago because they liked the community they moved into, but now it's changing because now we're putting in more apartments, now we're putting in townhomes. It's not the way that I grew up, and so I don't like it, and so I'm gonna, bitch at the city for allowing this.
Farther north.
You're always gonna have those people.
Right, you're gonna always have those people.
You now have the crux of the problem.
Right, so,
Perfectly articulated. So now finish up with a statement of how you're gonna fix
well,
it.
maybe we shouldn't be so hard and fast on some of the rules and really look to like them as guidelines more than hard and fast rules. And with these variances and different things, maybe we should not worry so much about treating everybody the same, but the need for that person as it relates to the person near that person. Because those are the people who are really affected by the decision for most things, lot sizes and stuff like that. Instead of trying to, have we have to worry about what's somebody 2 miles away because we approved a sign that's a little bit higher over here. Well, maybe we had a good reason to do that. And I do believe we have the authority to do that. And I do believe that we have the obligation to explain in best terms that we can why we approved one and not the other, because I think we have some latitude that the city and the planning commission and through these reports allow us to have latitude. And if we try to do in the best interests what is good for that local area and not trying to hurt the whole area, maybe we are serving a better purpose by allowing some deviations from the rules or the guidelines. Because to me, I'm looking at all this stuff and thinking, it doesn't seem like there's any give and take. Well, we have to worry about what everybody else is doing. I think we can be a little bit more individual than that. That's,
I'm with you, but at some point we end up having the governmentize or ordinance and zone. So we end up having some fairly hard and fast numbers so that as anyone comes to town, they can say, okay, this is what we're looking for. Instead of always going back to the drawing board, say, oh, in this case, we look at this. So that's why we end up with.
I still think you can look at the drawing board for the guidelines with some latitude to make some adjustments of the overall picture based on the circumstances that you had at the time.
And that's why we've allowed PUDs, because they allow maximum flexibility to change the rules. Now, the expectation with the PUD, and I don't think we've necessarily done a great job with this, is that we are supposed to, and Susan always reminds us, we're supposed to get something in return for them getting
We don't.
whatever the request is. So the PUD, I don't think will go away, but I don't think we would need as many PUDs necessary on some of these developments.
Okay, so when we're looking for something in return, that could be a tangible item or a non-tangible item. Like in the case of somebody wanting to take down the house, no longer functional, no longer easy to fix, no longer this, no longer that, that used to have 40% impervious surface, but we have a 25%, so they're bringing it down to 30%, but they're still over, so we don't want to approve it because they're still over, and make them start, try to go back to these rules. When I looked at some of these different lot sizes, and there, some of the properties, especially on the lake, there was a house, and then 2 more properties were subdivided out, because at the time, things were going on. It's like, okay, well, we can have a little mom and pop, house, and then we can build a house for one child and build a house for another child. And then we're gonna make these lot sizes smaller so they can have their own little piece of property and blah, blah, blah. 40 years later, that becomes a real problem when John doesn't wanna live there anymore. And now John wants to sell his house, and he can sell his house, but the person who buys it can't do anything with it because the lot size is too small to build anything.
That's right.
And so, we've got to come to a point where we understand we can't fix anything, but we just do our best. And look at a circumstance of today. And does it make business sense or community sense today? Because the rules are going to change. Even with these silly signs, the technology on the signs is going to get better and better and better and better. And as much as maybe he talked about the vandalism or whatever, there's going to be ebbs and flows to what people are going to need based on the current situation that they're in. And that might not work 10 years from now, and it might not have worked 10 years prior. But if it works now, and we're looking at the decisions being made now on what we know today, and they're sound decisions that don't negatively impact the community now, maybe we should make them, even if it's a little bit like we didn't approve somebody a year ago. Things change. They change all the time.
And yes, things change all the time. And I understand the desire to be very accommodating to requests. But shoreline variances are one that comes up over and over again, all right? And I think you've heard me with the examples that we've had. This one, well, if you just give me 5 foot, that's all I need. Well, now he's blocking my western view, so I need another 5 feet. And you gave him his 5, so I need my 5 too. And we do have to be mindful of the fact that if the city is sued because we either gave somebody the extra in a variance or we didn't give somebody, that we based our decisions on something that was not arbitrary and capricious, but that was a standard. Otherwise, then anybody can go and say, well, you let him do it on this side of town, so I get to do it here, and they will win.
But under that premise, then we should not approve any variance. That would be my desire. That would be your desire, but that's not reality.
But
That was Dick Jamchik's.
yes, now, yes, I can approve variances if you've got an issue with a slope. And the rule is that it is not something that you desire. You bought the house, you bought the property. You do your due diligence and you say, I don't like this house. And the city's rules say I can't build a bigger house, so I'm not going to buy this property, I'm going to buy a different property. We can't just say, okay, you bought a piece of property and you didn't like the house, so now we're going to let you build a McMansion.
I like the conversation,
what we gotta,
but I need to bring it back to the MXR1.
okay.
And these are base numbers anyway. That's why people come to, you know, they come here for the CUPs and PUDs. I mean, these are base numbers to bring, so people have an idea that if they have a question or they want to change it, that's what we're here for.
So where do we go from here? I believe, staff has answered all of the questions we had started with. We need additional information, and I'll give you an example. What do we do with, related to this, if we go to a smaller lot? It's, the discussion we had was that we probably need more park area as a return. Now, our park formula is either some percentage of the land or X amount per lot. So the X amount per lot works, right? That formula, you got more density, you get, but the land part doesn't. So do we look at needing to look at increasing that number of a percentage in this particular zone? Is that, or, so what other ancillary things affect this zone that we have to think about besides just, do we want, so that's the one that came to my mind. Susan, you're looking at me like you're making no sense, did I?
You're making good sense.
What about something as simple as just sidewalks everywhere? I mean, and a little bit more street lighting. I mean, if they're gonna be building these things, paths, bike paths and things like that, that actually connect to something is something I think that communities want, especially as we're moving more from a driving community to a, you know, more public transportation, more people are a little bit more health conscious. They maybe want to live closer to their homes. They're working more from home. So maybe we need to make neighborhoods more accessible so people can have that community involvement. I really think that sidewalks bring communities together.
But they've gotta be wide enough
Yes.
so that you can actually
At
walk,
least two people.
2 people and a kid.
Yes. And I would like to see that as a mandate, even if it's expensive.
Don't forget that dog.
Well, this is, when we do the PUDs, what you'll see on some of them is that they'll put sidewalks or trails on, and that's an enhancement for the city. That's an excellent enhancement for the city. Although, if we go to these smaller lots, we say, you know what? Sidewalks should really be required, or trails, whatever term you want to use, on one side or both sides, whatever you know, is that part of the trade-off for getting a smaller lot, is having to have sidewalks out there? Because I'm with you on this, that if you want to get to the park, we don't want these people walking down the street. I live on North Shore. It's something else when you have young kids.
Well, and Susan, I was listening to you talking about the parking situation. So are the streets in the areas that you were talking about, one, not wide enough for people to park a car? And then because the families have the teenagers and all of the stuff is in the 3-car garages, that creates the problem of the cars on the street, which are not wide enough for the cars.
Streets are wide.
The streets are wide, okay.
Streets are wide enough to park cars, but you end up with the cars parked.
If you go up behind the high school, was that Lipizan area up there now?
That-
You know,
right there's
the
a
roads are
cul-de-sac,
very
but-
narrow.
And they're parking
And I know when I was
straight
on the
in.
fire department, if cars were parked on one side,
That's not a
you couldn't get through in the
cul-de-sac.
wintertime.
Right,
And that's
We don't allow
after everybody
parking on
left
the
for work.
streets At night, right?
What?
okay.
We don't allow
So
parking
what
at
do you
night.
suppose is going on
The
there?
winter.
Basically, what you've got is, especially on the 2-story homes, if it's a 3 or 4 bedroom, you're gonna have 3 or 4 people there on a regular basis, especially in Forest Lake, because we have no mass transportation.
So if
They're all gonna have vehicles.
if the lots are large enough, and they're large enough to have 3-car garages, can those areas be designated, like no street parking? I mean, it's.
We don't allow street parking overnight in the winter.
Right, in the winter.
So most people have to figure it out. You might park in the summer, but they pretty much have to figure it out, how they're gonna get off the street, which is to the setback, right? If we don't require the houses to be set back far enough, we're not gonna get enough stacking in the driveways. Because people are not gonna throw their stuff out and park in
Right.
the garages. That just seems to be a rule.
Well, I do think that that's changing with the millennials, and I think that the accumulation of stuff is going, you don't think so?
Every single one of the houses in that area, they're all millennials. Yeah, most of them are from San Francisco, moving to Austin, Texas.
It comes in one Target bag at a time, but nothing ever
Or one
leaves.
Amazon box.
It's like my house, nothing ever leaves.
See, I do want to comment on like the parks and trails, the trails we have. I mean, I moved here 31 years ago, and there were not very many sidewalks except Main Street. But you look what's happened now over the years. I mean, they've put in a lot of trails, a lot of sidewalks, and they are working at connecting them to something. It takes a lot of time, takes money, and it's part of the development that we kind of tell, we want sidewalks or,
Right, but I'm not, like, in the few that I've seen, I still don't think there's enough. I just don't. Half, less than half, it's not enough. You put them on both sides of the street, but then you have the problem with enforcement of people shoveling and those kinds of things too, which that's also a pain in the neck if you have a sidewalk and somebody doesn't shovel it.
And the trick is getting a developer to agree to a wide enough sidewalk.
where they can drive a small SUV, a Jeep, a tractor that can plow some of them and,
I'm still looking at.
Or you talking about the-
Space for 2 adults and a kid.
okay, the smaller trail sidewalks.
That's my standard. 2 adults and a kid can walk abreast. It's practical. I'm sorry, no, I'm not going to tell you how wide the standard adult is. But you know what I'm going for. The sidewalk in front of, down by the roundabout is not wide enough.
Would anybody here just oppose a sidewalk in their own personal yard? For any reason?
I have one of mine, so
You don't have one?
I have one of mine.
You have one. Do you have one? A
No, I
sidewalk?
live on North Shore.
Oh.
It doesn't have anything.
We don't have sidewalks, we don't have shoulders.
And that's a huge problem, isn't it?
When my kids were 10 and 12 and they want to start riding their bikes to their buddies, there was a number of drinks on the deck before yes came out of the mouth. Just because you've got to hope that the people driving those streets, move over in the lane. And you know what? 99% of the people do, but it's the 1%.
Tickets that high?
That's
They
generous.
used to.
And how would that, if we want to make this community, and try to get things more like user friendly, how would we fix that problem? What are people willing to give up to fix that problem on North Shore? Because that's going to would cost a lot of money to fix. Put a bike path in there. Maybe make that whole way a one-way, and the other side.
That's a bike route.
It's coming.
Actually, I'm thinking that it should be like half
coming.
bike route.
No, it is, when it was Washington County, it was a labeled bike route.
They had it they actually had it as
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've lived down there 30 years.
It was just brought up at a meeting a few months ago about that up on the North Shore there where this is gonna be allocated. Oh, it was the guy from Wyoming had that lot and
Yeah.
wanted to get through there. And this has been designated for the bike trail or walking trail or whatever.
They
So-
made them reserve right-of-way,
Yeah.
15 extra feet of right-of-way. And the only way you do a North Shore Trail is when you do the reconstruction of the entire street.
Right.
And then
But
you
it's
have
in
to
the,
do land acquisition
coming.
and put a trail through it. That's the way you do it. And
Right, and
That's $5-6 million probably for.
Or you take a look at Eric Landis' bike plan, and he's got a plan to,
his lighting plant?
his bike plan,
Oh.
he's got a plan to.
I think you said his lighting plan. Christmas lights.
So what are we looking for the city staff for next meeting?
are we doing?
that's
I didn't have committees.
Party kill.
Well, I mean, some of the things we heard, we still haven't heard anything about what possible changes in the lot size or setbacks or anything. I mean, we've been discussing it, but we really don't have a direction on that. What I have heard is that we should be looking at maybe requiring an increase in parkland if we shrink the size. I've heard sidewalks, bike trails, but I haven't heard any movement or any interest in, do we change the standard or don't we change the standard? And if we change the standard, what's the standard go to?
Let's talk about the side, the side setbacks from the 10 feet. Is that what it is?
He'll pull, no, go to the other slide, it's got the setback.
You gotta have 15 feet between the houses. And so then you're looking
next
at
one.
like a 7.5
But
foot
the proposed,
side to side.
And why is that important?
Fire.
Fire.
Okay. So,
But they would prefer 20.
if they prefer more.
Yeah, the
Because of the
setback
flam-
preferred
yeah.
is 10
10 from
feet,
the
but you
property
get
line.
20 between both.
What about on the back side of the house? We can't really do much in the front if we want people to park their cars in their own driveways, but what about the back? Is there any kind of movement there to get, to change up these setbacks at all?
the city standard is 30, and frankly, we don't really see many requests to deviate from that, just because there's usually enough space in the rear yard. It's the front and the side setbacks that are typically asked for flexibility.
And I think the biggest decision-making isn't so much the rear setback or even the front setback at this point, because I think agree that garages at 30 feet make a lot of sense. I really think it's width, it's lot size as far as the width of this lot goes. That's really kind of focusing on, because the other stuff we're not recommending a change because those things seem to make sense. Maybe the side setback maybe to 7.5 if that's something we want to talk about, but the front setback, that makes perfect sense. The rear setback makes perfect sense. It's really width of the lot that we're pretty much talking about here, unless I miss my guess.
So the width of the lot for a single family is 65.
Right now it's 80.
Right now it's 80.
Right.
So then these numbers that are all highlighted in gold is proposed.
This
That's
is
correct.
just a starting point for discussion.
So with 65 feet, is that something that builders are like, do they want an even smaller lot width?
You heard it tonight.
The builders,
Whatever they can get away with. I think is-
The guy who is here tonight is looking at 60. We see a range of people, of requests from developers. 60 is not uncommon, 65 is not uncommon, just in my own experience.
So why would we oppose that? Like lowering that number if it gets builders to build? What's the drawback?
Well, it's really what you have to talk about, and Susan kind of mentioned this, it's what's the standard for the community? What do you want those neighborhoods to look like? Does it change the character of your city by making a development more dense, houses closer? And that's really, I mean, it's really a decision on what's that neighborhood or future neighborhood's going to look like compared to what you have now, and what the vision was when you put the comprehensive plan together. I mean, we talk about public input. This committee went through a lot of public input, I'm sure. I wasn't here, but when they had to update the comprehensive plan and had public meetings, and this is part, the 80-foot width is part of the comprehensive plan and densities and all that. So you've had some of that input already. Whether that's still valid or not, I can't argue either way, but.
The only pressure that we've heard to make lot sizes smaller has been from developers. We heard nothing when we were doing the comp plan and we were asking people to design neighborhoods, and we heard nothing about making lots smaller.
But you might not hear it with their voices, but my thought is that you're hearing it with the lots, what they're buying, because dollars, what they're buying, if they're buying the 65-foot lots.
They're buying what's available. They're buying what's available.
They're it's obviously a market-driven thing. Whatever's on the market and they can afford, they'll try to buy. New development, developers are trying to make the most money they can out of it, so smaller lot sizes mean more houses. However, you would hope that the starting price of those houses would be less than, you know, your standard house, but in this type of current market with houses, that's not the case. I mean,
Not happening.
your starting houses are starting at $400,000, and whether that's affordable for some or another, and that's the other decision you're trying to make is how affordable are you trying to make your housing stock for people to afford to come here? And it does 65-foot lot width, and the house that can be put on it, does that make a big difference in the sale price and what's available to people? So does it really make that much? How much of difference does that make? We don't have answers to those questions. I don't know that. But it's really about the standard of your community and what you want it to look like. And does it really impact a 65-foot lot with the house that's going on? It really make a big difference or not?
Oh, you grew up on 30-foot lots.
37.
Oh, pardon me.
So you get the dimensions right. My first lot in St. Paul was 50. So I'm used to small lots. I'm a city boy. 60, I'm fine with 65 with the caveat that if we have 10-foot side setbacks, you end up with a 5-foot wide structure. Put a 3-car garage in and that's 30 feet?
Absolute minimum of 30 feet.
30 feet, which now gives me 15 feet of house frontage. Because as the lot widths shrink, all I get is garage doors. And that's, I know that's what we don't want. You're gonna put sidewalks in so people can walk down and see garage doors. You know, so when you get the little wider lots, and you end up with that room and that front porch off to the side of the garage. And I think that's important. If you drive around the lake, especially out where I'm at, there's a fair amount of houses that are garage doors. And then there's a single door with the side light in it, and you've eaten up the 6-7 feet that's left.
So when you say we don't want that, who is we? That's like, I'm not saying I'm not one of those people, but do I represent people who are buying that? Because if they're buying it, they must want it.
Oh, it's available.
If it's available.
That's all it's available.
We don't have much of that built that way currently because our lot haven't gotten real narrow. So you have the garage. Help me out, Dennis, what's that term with the house to the side there? Like, you know, you got the garage door and then you got, yeah, it don't matter.
Because, okay, we're saying it's not aesthetically nice for neighborhoods to have that 3-car garage in the front.
Correct.
Okay. And when we say we don't want that, people must want that more than the aesthetic neighborhood, otherwise they wouldn't buy it.
When we had the developers in here, the one that had the smaller lots, he pointed out that he's got a front on the house.
Yes.
So they have streetscape.
And then could they do that on a 65-foot lot?
They were doing it on 60.
Okay.
They were doing it on 60s with, I believe, a 7.5-foot side setback, which is the same as a 65 with a 10-foot side setback.
So then maybe that's kind of the caveat, that it has to have a certain percentage of home front.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that. That's what the geniuses do on staff. How much home front?
If you have the person who has to have the 3-car garage that faces the street, that a certain percentage of that's square footage or the base footage, if it's, you know, what, 40 feet, 45 feet?
You get about 45-foot wide.
So you have to have 10 feet at least, that's actual house, not garage.
15 feet, you
Yeah,
want to get
Yeah, a
close.
2-car garage is about 20 by 20, so,
That's a 2-car.
a 2-car, that's why I said 2-car, so.
But there's no requirement we have to be 3 wide. Everybody wants 3
Well, I'm
wide.
thinking too deep. Maybe
You
that's
can go
how
deep.
you kind of say, if you really want to.
Because they're not parking 3 cars and 3 boats in there. We established that fact earlier in the conversation. That's why there's people on the street.
Well, and that's why it's important to keep the front yard setback for the garage where it's at, because You just need to push that back and, as they park, like we all said, park their toys or cars, and it goes over the sidewalk if you have sidewalks. Yeah, that's why that's important. That's why that's important to talk about, so.
Would a builder have any reason to not build a double deep garage versus 3 in the front?
Up to them.
I know it's up to them, but
They don't sell as well, because nobody wants to spend their time jockeying cars back and forth.
That's correct.
They don't sell as well.
The only reason they would have to do the deep style is if a design standard required.
but that's what I'm
That.
kind of getting at. Maybe we
That's the,
test that theory out.
Careful with design standards,
Fine.
because it's hard to mandate design standards.
But if we're gonna mandate,
There's differences here. I mean, if you're starting to mandate design, that means you can't paint your house blue, or you have to have round posts supporting the porch versus square posts, so you have to be careful with design. I recommend you stay a little bit away.
okay, but then how could you kind of say it has to have some kind of a percentage of house-looking stuff versus garage? How is that different?
When you look at this setback front line on here, the way that they did that was the house can be 25 feet from the front line, and the garage is 30 feet. All right, so that's how you get what Paul's looking for there.
Yeah, you're bringing the prominence of the house itself out to the street by 10 feet versus 5 feet, I should say, versus the 30-foot garage. So there's at least some visual impact there. Like I said, hopefully you see the door in the window and not the massive 3-car garage door sitting out there first.
It seems like the older style was, the garage was 25 feet from the curb and the house was 30 feet. Because you always walked,
Yeah, you saw about this much to the house, and then this much to the garage. It was like a little cubby hole that you had to go into. And sometimes you didn't know which house you were supposed to go to if they lined them up side to side.
I think the average person is going to want to look at a home with probably more frontage of the house and less garage. It's just my personal opinion. I mean, it's like when we bought our house on the lake on South Shore. I mean, it had a wraparound porch and it just was a cute house, and that's what attracted us to it. And we walked by it every single day and thought, man, just love that place. And never looked at a house with a 3-car garage and a little frontage of the house and thought, boy, you just think Norman Rockwell, that just doesn't happen. So anyway, that's just a personal opinion, but I mean, I'm fine with 65 feet. I mean, a lot more than I do when it comes to, garage width and stuff, but if that's how wide it's, I mean, you don't want to go much smaller than that.
Comments from this end on lot width?
I'm fine with the 65. But no, nothing smaller.
Ms. Young?
At 65, you're gonna have 12 developers in here. We need 50.
Well, and that's an excellent point. I mean, you're gonna have to really be a little bit stronger on PUDs and variances for width size, because you're correct. If you put 65, they'll come in at 60 and 55 and 50.
Well, is that where you can have like a 2-step, we'll approve with 65, but we will approve less if you come in with these, like, design styles?
No, 65, you get sidewalks and you get the 25 house and 30 garage. All right, that's at 65.
Right. No variances, no nothing, just that, right? Yeah.
And then if you have a consensus of 65, then your next discussion, probably in January, is the parkland and what that should look like, and any of the other amenities that you're going to ask for, sidewalks on both sides, or a trail on one side and a sidewalk on the other. We should really try to tie those together so we move forward with the pack. One thing that developers want most of the time is a surety know what they have to meet. And if we can go to 65, if you go to 65, we say you go to 65, but you need sidewalks on both sides, or a sidewalk on one side and a 5-foot trail on the other. That matches up. I mean, we do enough of that in the plan already when we meet with the developers, trying to get the trails in and get the streets to line up between subdivisions so we don't have a lot of dead ends and things. So, but I don't think it's a bad thing for this committee to talk about that and try to set a whatever standards may go along with the 65-foot.
That's something we would want to talk to Parks, Trails, and Lakes with, or that,
We'll
what does that
figure
look
that out.
like if you're,
And they're gonna, we wouldn't necessarily say you have to have a park with X number of houses, because then you end up with, which is not a bad thing to me, having a park within X number of blocks of every house. To me, that's a good thing. But that's not the way Forest Lake has been, and that's not a value that Forest Lake has ever had. But if you had dollars that could be spent on not only park capital, but also on, heaven forbid, some maintenance and some replacement of old stuff,
Careful about maintenance.
I understand. Capital and replacement. Maintenance as in lawn mowing and painting, I get. You can't go there, but,
General fund.
right. Which we also don't do, but,
Can builders be required to escrow some money in for like 50 years of maintenance of?
No.
No.
No?
no, we tried to do that with saying, look, this development plus the one next door, plus the one next door, you guys we're going to have a bigger entrance onto the highway, and we're gonna need a stoplight, so you need to fund those things, and that went down in court flames.
Really?
Yeah,
I understand anyway.
I've been around too long.
Rapidly in a great ball of fire, to be precise.
Yes.
how long ago was this?
15? Well, we started trying it 15 years ago, and then we got the lawsuit, what, 7 years ago?
What was the basis of the lawsuit, that they just said they shouldn't have to be,
Right. That whatever happened in the future was not their responsibility.
really?
Yeah.
That's why you see most communities, traffic gets terrible, and then they rebuild the road. They don't typically build the roads for the future, they build after the damage has been done.
That's why the reason that you can have a stoplight is after a certain number of deaths. Warrants. Deaths.
So that will be our January discussion then, some of the park stuff.
Yeah, I think we can come
Maybe
back
the
and talk about,
sidewalks.
the current structure of the park, what we're currently trying to ask the developers to do, which, to be honest, is kind of a combination of land with money for development at that park.
Yeah.
So that's currently what we're doing, because we need to get a little more land than we have now, so. But we'll bring that back at January. And we'll talk about sidewalks and trails as well.
Can I just ask everybody here how they feel about homeowners associations?
I'm 50/50 for it. I mean, if I want that, that's what I'm gonna go buy. Then I don't have to cut the grass. There's somebody gonna do my snow removal and all that. That's up to me if I buy into that. But it's my personal preference if I want it or not.
Do you like it or you don't?
I have the same feeling about homeowner associations that I do about packaged sewage treatment plants and packaged water plants. They're really great for the first 10 years, and then nobody wants, then somebody comes in and says, well, our fees are too high, and so we want to cut our fees down, but then you don't have any money when all the roofs need to fix, or the sidewalks need to be repaired, or the street has to be done, or the sewage treatment plant needs to be fixed. And so I have a real bias against those things, because early in my career, I was trying to figure out how to deal with those things. Fix them when there wasn't any money.
And HOAs really depend on the development themselves and what type of development it is. Often you see HOAs in senior living developments, single families, senior livings, that they don't want to cut the grass or they don't want to do. Where others, you just see that they have private roads and just plow the streets. And it just depends on each development. HOA is a little bit different.
Anything else we want to see for January? Otherwise, I'm going to get us out of here by 10:30 because I'm old.
Gotta go by 11. We gotta leave at 11.
On that note, before we adjourn, Nathan, you have anything for us?
No further updates for me.
Jesse? Anything?
Franny? No, I do not.
Patrick, anything else?
No, talk plan.
Budget has already been voted on?
No, the
is
budget
done?
will be voted on Monday, Monday night. We'll have the hearing is at 6:30, I believe. Half hour early, all the budget will be passed then.
Mr. Undum? All right. Geneva?
Nothing.
Jason?
I have a few things I've got.
Susan?
None.
Dennis? Mike?
Just one thing, Mr. Casey, how's the golf course building coming? I drive by it and I see the sticks are up.
Sticks are up, they're building the building, so it's in progress.
By this
It's moving
spring,
right
right?
along.
That I heard that was supposed to be.
Well, the building itself will be finished probably within a month to 6 weeks, but the interior will take longer as we will take that based on.
What is it?
It's a clubhouse building for the golf course. It's replacing the small.
Tiki hut.
It's like a shed.
Yeah, well, it probably would, but yeah, it's going up, and then we'll start to work next year on the interior. So I would say the whole, and the landscaping and all that, hopefully by next fall, it might all be, won't be open for the season, but by next fall, we should have it pretty much wrapped up, I would hope.
Good. That's it.
I want to thank you all for serving. I wish you all a very wonderful, joyous Christmas season. Happy New Year. I believe I'll see all of you next year, so I want to thank you for all your time and your input. And on that note, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.